Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Fanatec Esports Cup here at the FIA Motorsport Games 2022. We're live from the circuit Paul Ricard. My name is Paul Jeffrey, and I am delighted to welcome alongside me in the commentary box today the one, the only, Mr. Chaz Draycott.
Hello, Paul. It's an absolute joy to be here today. Honestly, I cannot believe the scale of this event, and even just the esports aspect of this event as well takes the words straight out of my mouth. It's wonderful to be here. We've had some great action already over the course of the day. Thanks, of course, to DJ Clark and Jesse Lee for commentating on them so far. And obviously now they've handed it over to us pair to deal with for the afternoon.
They have indeed. So first and foremost, everybody's still here in the Mistral Hall number 1 at Paul Ricard. Hello, thank you for staying with us. We've got 2 more races ahead of us. And for everybody at home tuning in for the very first time, just to give you a little bit of an idea of what to expect over the next couple of hours or so, we've had 4 quarter-final qualification races. We've taken 30 drivers through to tomorrow's semi-final. And now it's the last 2 opportunities for our drivers to secure the golden ticket, so to speak, into these semi-finals. 2 races, only 10 drivers, 5 from each Chaz, are going to make it through.
Yeah, that's the different sort of element of these races that we're going to see now, because so far today we've had races where the top 10 are the important positions and that's who goes through. Now we've got 2 races where only the top 5 go through, and we've got similar sized grids for each race as well, so it's going to be very exciting to see who can make it. And of course then they have to consider the fact that when they go into these semi-finals, they're going to be starting further back in the grid compared to where they would have hoped to have been if they would have been in that top 10 in the first place.
Exactly, and we've got some big name drivers that are on the grid. So these are the drivers, just to be clear to everybody at home, these are the drivers that have already raced today, Chaz. They've already been in their respective quarter-final event, but didn't make that top 10 cutoff.
Yes.
So we were kind of talking off-air when we were watching DJ and Jesse do their business in the quarters. This is the first time these drivers have gone on stage, come off it, had a very, very short break, and gone straight back on it again for another hour's race.
Well, yeah, especially the drivers that were in that third quarter-final as well. You know, they will have been off air for, about 25 minutes, if that. But before any of the races they'd done before now, they'd obviously had a long, long time to prepare for it. They could have jumped in and out of the rigs whenever they wanted during practice and so on. And now they've had a very quick turnaround that they've got to deal with. So I think we may see some drivers, it'll either work in their favour or it won't. They'll either still be tuned into a bit of a rhythm to the last time they drove the car, which was less than an hour ago, but for some of the drivers that were in the earlier races, they will have sort of fallen out of that rhythm and they've got to take time reacclimatising themselves with how the car behaves and how the track behaves.
Absolutely, and for anybody that's watching at home that's new to the world of the FIA Motorsport Games, obviously first and foremost a massive welcome to this broadcast, and you'll notice that these drivers, they are representing their countries, which is something we don't see very often in sim racing. So although we'll be talking about driver names, they're also representing their nation, and we've got 57 nations, 57 drivers represented in this competition. And this is just the esport aspect. This is just one of 16 disciplines at the Motorsport Games, the FIA Motorsport Games. It's, you're touching on it, Chaz, at the start of the show. It's a sensational day, an activity, an activation by FIA and by SRO Motorsport, isn't it?
Yeah, it's absolutely epic. I mean, we had a walk around the paddock this morning, and there's no other paddock that I've ever been to where you can stumble across like Lada rally cars and Audi Quattros and then suddenly bump into a GT3 car, then watch electric karting, then see slaloms, and then you've got touring cars, TCR cars, which you know oh so well, modern rally cars as well, and then you come in here and you see this wonderful esports hall. It is really an event that has absolutely everything. No matter what sort of discipline you're into, there is always something to look at, and that's what I love about this.
Absolutely right, and of course the quarter-final races that we've had, the 3 that we've had before we came on air, I think it's fair to say, and I am accused of being a little bit over-enthusiastic from time to time, they have been ding-dong. Incredible racing, great fights throughout the field, no matter whether it's in the top 10, out of the top 10, these guys and girls have represented their nation and the world of esports sim racing so incredibly well so far in this competition, and we've still got these 2 races and tomorrow's final activations. It's been spectacular, hasn't it, as we see in the arena on screen now.
Absolutely, it's been amazing. You know, these beautiful rigs here as well, which we must thank Fanatec and AK Esports for, because they look awesome and the drivers have been praising them all day. And even one little detail we noticed earlier is, from as a spectator here in the hall, you get there's little tablets above everybody's rigs with little flags on, and that's just the sort of tiny details that I absolutely love about these events. But you're right, you know, there's been so much going on so far, some great action, and it has been amazing. I mean, the whole atmosphere, it's my first sort of time in one of these sorts of esports halls, so to speak, at one of these local events. And the buzz you get from everybody's reactions in the hall like this is just amazing. I got goosebumps when everybody was watching the battles and reacting to it live, but you're in the same room as the drivers, and that's not something you always get in sim racing, is it? I mean, we've both commentated on a lot of it before, but back at home, and then the other drivers all around the world in their own houses, rooms, wherever. And now everybody's in the same room doing all of this. It's such an amazing buzz.
And I think to kind of add to that as well, often you see LAN events of old, or sometimes you see on-site events. What makes this particularly interesting for these drivers, and you'll have seen it when we looked at the overall of the floor with all the rigs, there's FIA officials everywhere in the full FIA shirts, stood on your shoulder watching your every move to make sure it's above board, and that can be a little bit unnerving maybe for the drivers, that you've got the live audience, you've got the television broadcast, this is going out all over the world, this broadcast, and then you've got the governing body of World Motorsport sat making sure that you're above board too, and it's a real pressure cooker environment, Chaz, and don't forget, they're representing their country, so the honour of winning the esport competition, but if they get their medal from this one, that goes to their nation's overall medal haul for the entire FIA Motorsport Games. So you're not just racing for esports, you're racing for your nation across the board. That's pressure.
Definitely on a full global event, it's absolutely amazing. I called it the Olympics of motorsports the other day because it's effectively what it is. It's just absolutely awesome, but it's another sign that through the horrors of the COVID pandemic and everything that came with it, sim racing has been embraced so much into real world motorsport now. There's still that line drawn between the two, which I think there always should be, but still, it's still being brought into a bigger picture of a real world event, and it is great to see. It's really heartwarming, obviously, for people like us that started in sim racing, came to the real world side of things, and we've still got the love for it, and everybody's still got the passion for it, and it's really heartwarming to see.
Yeah, it really is. It's a sensational sport of its own kind. Now, before we get started, it's rolling start. We're using a Seto course of competency only, of course, and just to let you all know, this is going to be a 1 hour race. There's a mandatory 10-minute pit window. The drivers will have to go down pit lane. They don't have to change tyres, but as a minimum, they have to put 1 litre of fuel in the car in order to satisfy that mandated rule. If they don't do that, they will get a penalty. You get a penalty, you don't get the result that you're looking for. So there's an element of strategy, Chaz, as well as just going as quick as you possibly can. You've got to look after your car, you've got to look after your driving style, you've got to look after your tyres and your fuel consumption as well. And while I'm talking, Chaz, we're just having a quick, just hearing on the podium, we're just having a quick server restart, so a further 2 minutes, 50-second delay will come on, which gives us more time to waffle on about how much we're enjoying ourselves and making people feel sick that they're not here.
We are indeed. It's been very enjoyable. I mean, we've had a hell of a journey even just to get here over the last 2 days. But yes, I mean, the fact that these drivers have so much pressure riding on their shoulders is just one of the best things. Absolutely one of the best things, because it gets everybody into an environment where we see how they cope under pressure.
Yeah.
When these drivers are at home and they're in their own rigs, using their own hardware. I've spoken to a couple of drivers already this weekend, and they're saying sometimes one of the challenges of events like this is you're using different hardware than what you're used to. Even if they're still using Fanatec stuff, they'll be using a different rim or just have buttons laid out in a different way and so on. There are regulations against what the drivers can change and can't change when they get here into these rigs, but still, just adding that little bit of pressure really puts them up against it, and that's why you see some of the best performances come out of the woodwork.
Now, talking about pressure, and as a driver yourself, Chaz, as we've just seen, server's been restarted, so the clock, in effect, has reset itself. We're going to do the formation lap again. As a driver, how does that affect you? Because you've already started your preparation program, you've already started the warm-up lap, your adrenaline's starting to raise, your heart rate's starting to raise, and then back down again, and you've got to start again. Does that have an effect, or will you just brush that off and move forward?
I think it depends where you are in the field and what you've got to work for. So, for the drivers that are starting at the front, there will be, no matter how many times you've done it, there will be a massive amount of nerves because you're the one that's leading the field away. You're the one that's the head of that formation lap. And you don't effectively choose when to go, but you're the first one that it really matters when you do go. And to be honest with you, when you have to go through that lap again and just coast around with everybody behind you, you've got that weight on your shoulders, it can really get into your head. But for some of our drivers further down the order, they've got more of a point to prove, more room to sort of gain positions going forward. They might not feel as much pressure because they're thinking, right, someone's going to have a bit of a prang here and there, someone's going to have a bit of contact, and as you said, survival is key, isn't it, here?
Yeah, and I think actually that leads me on to a point. I always say and I always think, and in the nicest way possible, if you're on pole position for a race, you can't win the race, you can only lose it.
Yes.
If you're on pole position, it's expected that you will be at the sharp end. But if you're 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, you can only move forward because 5th,
Yes.
6th, 7th, 8th, it's not good enough to get through. You need a top 5.
Yes.
So you can only push forward. You can only win the event, whether the quote-unquote front runners can only lose it.
Yes.
And I think that adds to your point, doesn't it? The whole,
Yeah.
you're leading the field, the pressure's on you, the eyes are on you almost. The broadcast always in motor racing kind of focuses on the leader going into T1 and stuff. So you know that you're front and centre, and any mistakes amplified a little bit, isn't it, from there?
Yeah, well, that's it. I mean, you've got everything to lose, like you say, when you are in the lead of a race. So the pressure is higher. There's more on your shoulders, effectively. And if you are a driver that's trying to come through from further down, then you've got that point to prove and maybe not so much to lose. So it sort of flips on its head the further down the field you go, and it's a wonderful thing, isn't it?
And I think, Token, I don't want to jinx things by talking about T1. It's been relatively clean in the 3 races that we've seen today, but it is worth noting that one of our drivers, Matika, was very much in the top 10 in their 3rd quarter-final race. But a contact in T1 spun Matika around, dropped him outside of the top 10, and that's why he's now in this last chance qualification. And he's going to be lining up, just looking down my order, he's going to be lining up in the 2nd last chance race that we have straight after this one.
Yeah.
So there's the element of danger as well. You need to push forward, but if you get involved in any kind of altercation in the early laps, it makes it all the more difficult. There's only 13 cars on the grid, but you need to be in the top 5. That's not an easy task against these talents.
No, definitely not. I mean, it's less than half the grid, you know. So you're gonna the minority is what goes through in this race, and we've seen it before. I mean, in the last race there was contact at the very start between Luca Lossio, the Italian driver, turning across the front of Sviderek a little bit, but you know, one driver ran wide, one didn't leave all the room in the world on the inside, and that's the thing. When the first corner is a chicane as well, you've got to manage the weight transfer. There's so much pressure going into that first chicane, and because it's a long straight here at Paul Ricard, much like it is on the back straight as well, when you get to the end of it, you've already had a long time to think about what you're going to do when you get there. It's like being at Monza. You know, when you're at Monza, you go into those chicanes, you've had a long old time to think about how wrong you're going to get it.
Exactly.
Trust me, I've done that a lot.
Yeah, exactly. I think sometimes you can have a little bit too much thinking time, can't you? And it becomes less natural what you're doing. And a lot of these drivers, they're so well practiced, they're so skilled that it's reflex and muscle memory what's happening. It's not thinking like the likes of you and I and some folks watching at home. I'll have to brake here, I'll turn in here, I'll put this much steering lock on, this much throttle. It's all, I think Ed Senna once said, didn't he? It's an out-of-body experience. The car is driving itself, and you're just there as sort of an interested spectator. And I think, when you do have too much time to think, that's when things go wrong.
Yes, they certainly do. It's you've got to get into a rhythm, and sometimes the rhythm can sort of overtake you a bit. And then when you suddenly snap back into it and you think, oh God, what am I doing? That's when you have the moment, and that's when it happens, you know. And some of these drivers are really, really good at staying within that rhythm, but not having that sort of loss of control when they have to maybe correct something or adjust a line because there's a bit of lap traffic or something like that. You do see it often where people are so used to being at the front and just hot lapping all the time that when they do just come across a bit of lap traffic or something else happens that maybe they've not quite got it right, suddenly it's like they wake up all of a sudden out of this slumber of just going round and round, and that's where the mistakes creep in. So I'm intrigued to see if we get any of that, because we've both discussed it before the race. An hour is the exact same time that we've had through the quarterfinals, so they've got to do it all over again just to scramble for those last 5 spots rather than doing a reduced distance race.
And for these drivers in this heat, this is literally their fight. This is potentially the final time they will take part in the 2022 FIA Motorsport Games. So there's no second chances now. No. This is the second chance. This is the last chance saloon. If you get the job done now, you move forward, and tomorrow you can race for medals. If you don't, it's been a long way to come for absolutely nothing. Yeah,
well, we've mentioned the pressure, and to be honest, that aspect of it, because it could be your last race of the weekend, that adds pressure on even the drivers at the back, because now they have to move forward. They've got no choice. They can't just sort of linger in 7th position and think, I'm safe here, I'm through. You know, you have to go for it, and it's going to be certainly an exciting one, I'm sure. As they come into the last corner now, Paul, we're about to get things underway. Let's do it.
We have lots of stories that are about to unfold, and Kishimoto is the man on pole position, leading the car for Peru in the number 18 Ferrari. Teichmann in 2nd position, Rubelar P3, and Morales in the number 15 round out our top 4 drivers. They're looking for the lights at the top of the gantry. In a few moments' time, the revs will rise, the loud noise will kick in a gear, and we are go for the first of the last chance. Qualification races here at the 2022 FIA Motorsport Games, and immediately the 48 BMW gets a great start coming into T1. Ferrari cuts to the inside, just about avoids contact. Everybody through. No, just as I say, everybody's through cleanly. There's a little bit of contact further down Chaz, but most drivers survive, most get away for the fight up to the chicane.
Yeah, the BMW of Michael Teichmann, though, he was way in front of the Ferrari as they crossed the line, though. It was almost like Kishimoto was holding back, and he wanted to try and sort of lure him back into it to get a run on him. It didn't work, and then Nico Rublar wanted to go all the way over on the left-hand side and come through up into second place. A little bit of door banging on the way into turn one, but they made it through. It was the Bahamas car that was around at the back of the field, unfortunately, which is Dominic Robinson. That was the McLaren 720S. Well, everybody keeping it tidy otherwise, as there's a sandwich here actually with the McLaren in the middle of it. This is Morales. He's got the green Mercedes right in front of him.
And this is the pinch point, isn't it? Where we come down the long back straight, everybody kind of buttles up together, and then we come in a senior, and you've got to be really, really careful. Now, we've seen cars going too wide previously, as we've seen Kishimoto now. The Ferrari's very sharp in a straight line, and Kishimoto gets the job done for Peru and takes the lead. But there we go, it's the Teichmann behind, not giving this one up. So the 48 to the inside gets the job done. Mexico now are our race leaders, and Rublar, for good measure, in the Chilean Porsche, thinks, I'll have a piece of this one. It looks like fun. And there he goes into second position, with Polana in position 4, also quite interested to buy in to the fight between the top 3.
It's great to see as well. We've got 4 different manufacturers in the top 4. We've got the BMW leading the Porsche, then the Ferrari and the Mercedes as well, all with their own little different nuances about them. The big beefy V8 engine in the front end of the Mercedes, the smaller twin turbocharged V8 in the back of the Ferrari, flat 6 in the back of the Porsche. But look at them all checking up through the final corner. It's almost like the first lap of a touring car race, Paul. They're all so close together. We've got side by side now between Artstin, the BMW, and Morales, and the McLaren Guatemalan machine, and there's just no overlap for him there. The BMW gets a better run down the straight as cones go flying on the way to the first chicane, but bounces back off him again. It's all still nose to tail, all running a little bit deep though into the first chicane. Another marker goes absolutely flying, but still really close stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, everybody's a little bit tentative, I think, at this stage in the race, just playing the cards close to the chest. You don't want to give away too much, but at the same time, you don't want to make a race-ending mistake, as Kishimoto now under massive pressure from Rublar in the Mercedes. Rublar not quite got enough to get the job done. Kishimoto then loses out on the switchback, so great drive there from the Polani, in the contact.
No.
I knew that was coming. I could sense there was a little bit of something there, and sadly Georgia having to regain the racetrack, and that is Chantiora in the number 5.
Yeah, a little bit of a tap there, just cut across the front of him. I think it was the Porsche, wasn't it, that was going through, or maybe the Ferrari, sorry. But look, side by side for the race lead here. Actually, Teichmann on the inside of Rublar, and then behind them, side by side as well. Kishimoto trying to go around the outside of Pilane behind them. They've got Arzt in the BMW. He's thinking, right, which way do we go here now? He's going to cut down to the inside. He's later on the brakes, and he takes one. That was a lovely bit of opportunistic driving. And the race leader's gone the way of Nico Rublar. There's nearly contact there between Pilane and Arzt as well. But it is Arzt that moves up into 4th position. The Hungarian driver certainly will be happy with that one. Started 5th in this race and is now back up there after losing a couple of places early on. There's Kaketso Pilane, the South African driver in the bottom right of our screen, now lining up behind the BMW. It's hard to see round the BMW, to be honest. It's got quite the chunky backside, hasn't it, Paul?
Yeah, it really has. That's great driving, actually, from Pilane at this stage. Very, very brave, respectful as well to the rivals around him, and now he's very much fancying a chances of sneaking back up into 4th position. That's that we can see in the BMW ahead. So which car's quickest in the straight line? Which one's good in the squiggly bits? And who's got the bravery at this stage in the race? Because let's not forget, Chaz, top 5 is all that matters. 4th would be great, 3rd would be even better, but 5 is what gets you through to tomorrow, and that's where the real deal happens. But then, when you've got people like Johannes Morales, Guatemala behind you, you can't afford to hold on too long, otherwise this 2-way fight is going to become a 4-way fight, and then you've got a whole world of trouble on your hands.
Well, that's it now. What Morales and Tempo want to do is just rein it in a bit and just keep their heads cool, and then gradually move forward towards that fight in front of them, because if those guys are all, even if they're battling or even if they're not, and they're just trying not to hold each other up, they might have to compromise slightly and they'll lose a bit of time. So the cars behind them will just naturally gain a little bit on them. They've got a bit more clear road in front of them so they can push. But look, when you nose to tail like this, like Arzt and Pilane are, all it's going to do is cause a bit of a bottleneck within the pack. And look at that now, Arzt really cleverly just putting the BMW gradually over to the right-hand side. Nothing a little bit too untoward. He doesn't throw the car across the front of the Mercedes. Up through the gears they go. The Mercedes has always been a really good all-round GT3 car. It's a very successful machine. And it's always been quite a stable car as well. Big, beefy lump up front and around the outside through the long sweeping right-hander. As long as he gets back on before those markers there, he's usually all right. Clips just a couple of them, but I think that's okay. Goes for the cutback down the inside of Aerts in the BMW. And this is one of the beauties about Paul Ricard, isn't it, here on this one, Paul? Because there's so many lines that you can take through some of these complexes and get some beautiful cutbacks on one another. This is great driving, but as you predicted, look who's behind him now.
Exactly. The harder these two drivers fight, the more they're going to bring other cars into the conversation. But Polanyi, really good driver, as you say, Chaz, giving racing room to his rival, making sure that you can run too wide. No one's getting too aggressive at this stage in the race. But really, Polanyi now needs to uncork that bottle that's currently Aerts in the BMW, because as we can well see on our screen, Morales all over the back of the Mercedes now, and you do not want to be looking in your mirrors. He needs to be looking forward, does Polanyi, at this stage, to try and find a way past that BMW. And while they're squabbling, that's allowing Kishimoto, Teichmann and Rubler ahead to start to walk away a little bit, and they're going to get a comfort blanket when it comes to the pit stops. And you know what the competition's like in this series. The gaps are so small, it's very hard to make a 2-3 second gap up if you lose it in a squabble.
Absolutely. It's interesting to note as well that Morales is the highest placed McLaren in this race, and we've had a McLaren win all 3 quarterfinals before now as well. I was just going to say the McLaren's been strong, and then, to be honest, I was just thinking, well, where are the rest of them? This is a look at the Bentley, the Nigerian machine, just down the inside of the Ferrari, in a bit of argy-bargy there as they swap positions time and time again.
Yeah, not the first time we've seen the Nigerian car in a little bit of strife. Finished 18th in their quarter-final race, but a bit of, to quote your words, argy-bargy with one of the leaders when being lapped in that race as well. A little bit unexpected behaviour. So the Nigerian car struggling once again, as now we're looking at Polanyi to the outside once again in the senior. Can they get round the outside? It's a good, it's a popular move that we've seen so far. He'll get back onto the racetrack just before those ballards. Enough racing room from Aerts has been given as well. Again, too wide. A little bit of a kiss, and that sends a South African car off the racetrack, collected by Morales as well. And that is a real sad outcome for what was a great period of racing in the first few minutes of this event. And Polanyi now has all the work in the world to do to get back into contention.
He does indeed. Just didn't leave enough room down the inside. Just wanted to make sure that Aerts stayed to the inside. I'm sure he was hoping that if there was contact, it was very even contact. There wasn't sort of one really far in front of the other. They could have just bounced off a little bit. And then Morales, to be fair, he's actually got straightened up by hitting the front of the Mercedes. This is another look back at the McLaren further down the order. This is the number 5 machine. This is going into the chicane near the start of the lap.
And this is an incident that's cost a 5-second time penalty. But here there we go, assaulting the rear of the number 11. So contact between those two, the BMW and the McLaren, get back up running again. But will there be a secondary contact? There we go. That's what we saw in the live pictures, the second part of it. Unsafe rejoin and the slam dunk, sadly, 5-second penalty. But the good news for them, Chaz, is that can be served, can't it, during the mandatory pit stop?
It can indeed, yeah. It was the Uzbekistan Ferrari that cut across the front there, but I'm not sure that would have been what the McLaren was penalised for. It was clearly the number 11 Chinese Taipei machine getting a tap in the rear there. Still close here further down the order though. Well, I say further down, this is only 6th place actually. This is Temper in 6th position in the Austrian BMW. One little thing that we've noticed over the course of the day is you'll see Österreich on the right hand side of this BMW, but on the left you'll see the word Austria. They've got the English version of the country name on the left hand side and then the native tongue name of the country on the right hand side. Lovely little details like that. We've been spotting them all day, haven't we? Yeah,
that's been part of the fun of the day, hasn't it? To notice the little detail, attention to detail that's over the entire FIA Motorsport games, as well as this, the Fanatec Esports Cup, the esports aspect of the FIA Motorsport games this year. But we're seeing Felix Templer now very tight on the inside, has the inside line. Does he have the overlap of the McLaren? Not quite at this moment in time, but he's keeping the nose to the inside. The McLaren and Morales running round on the wider line, but has the run off the corner. So Temper doesn't have quite enough of an overlap. He's still showing his nose though, so that Morales number 15 car starting to get a little bit ragged and a little bit under pressure. Let's have a look now at a replay. So Felix Temper in the number 26, number 6 place car. We can see the picture in picture. There's his concentration, and I love this, Chaz. I love this when you're in a live venue and you can see into the eyes of the driver. Look how hard he's working behind the wheel. I'm concentrated at the job in hand he's doing.
Yeah, he really is pushing it hard. You can see by how much force they have to put into the actual wheel itself, and it's a very physical thing at the end of the day. Here's a look back then This is Pilane. This is around the outside of Arzt in the BMW, so we're going to see that contact. You can see he doesn't go very far off the road at all, comes back on before the markers, but just look where Arzt is in comparison to the curb. He's not that far off the white line, but watch, as Morales gets straightened up by the contact, he was very, very lucky there. There was that incident in front of him. I think, to be fair, though, he was probably a little bit sideways in avoidance, getting harder on the brakes than he normally would do around there, because it's a nightmare of a corner. You're trying to get the car slowed down into a corner that's tightening up, and when you put in more and more pressure on the brakes in a car where all the weight's in the rear end, because that's where the engine is in the McLaren, it's just a big pendulum and it's going to go around. But now we get to see Pilane make his way back through the field. He's now behind Lynn in the number 11 BMW.
Yeah, Pilane still very much in this conversation for a top 5. Don't forget that Lynn ahead has a 5-second time penalty. So although he's there on the racetrack, he will be taken out of things a little bit. But Pilane knows that's happening, but he needs to clear the white BMW. And he's going to have a go at Temper as well. So that's a good strategic manoeuvre there for Pilane, coming down into the fast right-hander, keeps the car to the inside, nice and tight, nice and under control, doesn't use the racetrack to cover the inside line, and then goes to Temper as well. 1 overtaking manoeuvre, 2 overtaking manoeuvres, all in the same corner. Job done for the number 26, back up in a 6th position.
Oh, and a bit of a kiss there between the 2 BMWs as well. Lynn just sort of nudging Temper and saying, come on, sunshine, get on with it. But that was fantastic stuff from Pilane. That's exactly what he needed to do. Really puts himself back in the hunt now. And to be honest, if you think you've got to overtake 2 cars over the course of a race, you'd think, flipping it, that's going to be a lot of hard work, even just for having 48 minutes left. But to do it in 1 corner like that, very impressive. As you mentioned earlier, Paul, we've seen a number of drivers make some wonderful moves around there over the course of today so far, and obviously Pilane's seen that and he's gone, that is going to be my main opportunity here. He was clever though, because he boxed Lynn in there. Lynn really closed up to the back of Temper, but he was all the way over on the left hand side of the circuit. Pilane came over and kept him there, and that was so crucial in getting that move done.
Yeah, fabulous bit of driving, and the upshot for that is now Pilane is only 0.7 of a second away from the all-important top 5. 5th position, of course, being the bubble in order to qualify for the next stage of the competition. So Pilane now, after what looked like an almost unmitigated disaster a few laps ago, is absolutely well and truly in, and we've still got a pit stop as well to make. So there's still, we've seen it all the way through today, haven't we? Where depending on how the pit stop phase works for you, you can lose or gain places. And at the moment, it kind of seems to be swaying towards coming in early when the pit window opens. That's where we've seen the most advantage. But don't need to bother about that one, because this is Pilane now. I'll do it on the racetrack, thank you very much. There we go, that's the number 15 car. Go to the inside, it's a big old powerful Mercedes. He's got the inside line, he's got the high ground, the advantage coming into the corner, and he's going to have track position as well before we even think about turning in. South Africa back into 5th.
Absolutely phenomenal stuff. Then behind as well, we've got Temper and Lynn side by side. The 2 BMWs rubbing together as they manage to kiss wing mirrors before they go through the very fast right-hander, both keeping it under control. But this is phenomenal by Pilane. Like you said, it was honestly completely done in our minds a moment ago. No disrespect to him on the team, of course, but you would have thought, there's not much chance of him coming through now unless he does something with the pit stop strategy. It's completely benign. He's back where he was. He's up in 5th position. It's just amazing. And it's been, what, 3-4 laps since he did that?
Yeah, and he's only 2.7 seconds away from Arts ahead of him. So he's absolutely not out of contention to move up at least another position. 46 minutes and a half to go. There's a lot of racing in front of us.
Oh, down the inside, Lynn late on the brakes. Lovely stuff. We see that move quite often, but then again, Temper says, yeah, I've seen it a lot, and I'll watch this. I'm going to get the cut back on him. He sees it coming. But this is the thing. We've seen a lot of really respectful driving over the course of today. You know, when there's big moves like that and sends sometimes down the inside, in some categories you would see a driver maybe move over on the brakes a little bit as if to say, no, I'm not standing for this. But these guys, they're clever. They know exactly what they're doing, and they're thinking, you know what, I'm going to let you go down the inside. I'm going to focus on my line, and I'm going to get a good run out of here, and I'll get you back. And that's exactly what Temper's done there. And these two are having a right good ding-dong, and in equal machinery as well, which is an interesting aspect of it.
But as well, Charles, let's not forget, they're representing the nation too. So you don't want to do anything too silly, you don't want to be too aggressive, because you are literally representing your country, and that's a beautiful little cutback there for Lynn. Great piece of driving, recognised it early on Temper, got the car to the inside, got the run off of the corner, and that was sensational overtake for the number 11. So Chinese Taipei car back up in a 7th place.
That was amazing. Like, he just really had a punch off the corner in comparison to Temper there. That was magical. The car just suddenly teleported across the side of Temper's machine. That was brilliant, really impressive stuff. But now, of course, Temper back in the slipstream. As we discussed earlier, it's not a massive slipstream you get from GT3 cars, but some of the bigger, beefier machines like the BMW, they do punch one hell of a hole in the air with its big, ugly face. But to be honest with you, Lynn doesn't want to take that lying down, and Temper, well, he makes it through down the inside. This is great stuff, swapping position after position. They might not be actually fighting for a position to go through into the semi-finals, but they're certainly working hard for it, because at the end of the day, someone could have a mishap further up the order and that could catapult them into the top 5. But look how hard they're working it. Lynn is looking at every single gap down the inside of that BMW in front.
Yeah, this is sensational from the two BMWs. As you say, outside of the qualification spots at the moment, but Luca Lozio, for example, in the semi-finals, ran out of fuel on the final lap, so you do not know what is going to happen. As once again, Lynn throws the car down the inside. This time he gets it stopped. This time he gets it pointed in a straight line, but Temper recognised what was coming early, concentrated on the corner exit, and now they'll smile on his face there as well. He knows he's got an opportunity coming down into the chicane for the first corner, has the car to the inside line, not quite fully alongside, and decides better to bring it out of it a little bit earlier, slip back behind and live to fight another day. But these are two drivers that are leaving absolutely nothing. You wouldn't want to go to a picnic with them because they don't leave anything on the table.
Well, neither do I, to be honest. It's effective. Yeah, let's not go there. But it's great to see that little sort of cheeky smile there from Temper, because I often criticise some drivers because they'll win an important race, and when they're crossing the line, they won't shout or cheer or jump around or anything. Even just a move like that, Felix is a happy boy. But look at this now, though. Arts is suddenly thinking, where have you come from? Pilane's all over the back of him again in the Mercedes. He's like, right, go on then, take 2. Try going around the outside of me again here, son. Watch this. Look at the Mercedes there into 6th gear. It just completely catapults itself in front. Really good top end. It's always had fantastic grunters, that car. It makes its way alongside the left-hand door of the BMW M4 GT3. Takes about 3 to 5 working days to drive past one. Tries to go around the outside, but look at the speed that he can carry through there. He's got so much confidence. Doesn't go that far off the road. Now let's see. This is literally deja vu into the right-hander. He's so close to the front of him. Pilane's putting a lot of trust on the car on the inside, but still the position goes back the other way, but cutbacks begin now, Paul. This is a very twisty final sector.
Yeah, this is brilliant driving from these two. Pilane's got pace to spare at this moment in time, but he just doesn't have quite enough room to find his way past Arts in the Hungarian BMW ahead. But now, showing his nose nice and early for the run down into the final sector of corners. Hungarian car covers the inside line. This is going to compromise him a little bit on the exit. There we go, South Africa to the outside. Tries to get the cutback for the run onto the back straight, and that's worked very nicely indeed, using the grunt of the Mercedes, as you mentioned, to its best advantage, but it just, in the acceleration phase, doesn't quite have enough to get fully alongside, and by the time we get to the end of the straight, that's where the advantage starts to show. But in the braking zone, the BMW has the inside line, and Arts holding on at the moment, too wide through the first corner. The Hungarian Mercedes drops back into, sorry, the South African Mercedes drops back behind in position, but my goodness me, Chaz Draycott, this is pretty exciting, to say the least, and they're staying out of each other's way at the moment as well. They're giving each other no room, but just enough room to avoid drama. Maybe a commentator's curse? We'll find out.
I'll start a stopwatch.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, all this time they're having this fantastic battle. They're not losing a massive amount of time to Morales behind them, but it's just excellent viewing, it really is. And you can see Pilane trying to set up every cutback he can. And to be honest, Arts, he can't afford not to cover the inside line on the way in here, because if he does leave it open, Pilane will just take that. This is basically his plan B at the moment, is just to get these cutbacks all the time. But watch now, as they go up into 6th gear, the Mercedes just starts to edge in front a little bit. He's not had as much slipstream this time, but watch the way that the car just sort of releases itself around this right-hander. He throws it around the outside, and it's incredibly impressive. And you have to give credit to Arts as well. He's been giving room on the inside. Let's see it again. Although this time, no, Pilane doesn't get that run, actually. It's almost like a different machine on this lap, but he looks down the inside, just tries to unsettle the Hungarian, and he has done. He's found that gap down the inside, and now he's going to be on the inside for this next corner, but then, of course, he's going to be on the outside for the next one. This is the nature of Paul Ricard. One way, then the other, so much on corners that tighten up, then open up on the exit, tries to find the gap again, and I think Art's had to come off the brakes there to avoid contact. Pilane's scared him into that corner, but now, once they go around this left-hander after this, he's going to be on the outside again and have to work a cutback again. This is just going one way, then the other, so many times, Paul.
Sensational. Can I open my eyes yet? Because that was very, very scary, but precision driving from these two. But the danger is now the gap, the 2-second gap last time we saw it to Morales behind. will be eating and eating and eating away, and we're so close now to the mandatory pit window. It almost looks like, do you really want to be having this big a squabble? You're becoming detached from the cars ahead, and you're starting to bring in your competitors behind. There we go.
Yeah,
that is Morales now very much in the fight to try and find a way past. And let's not forget, 4th and 5th position are the last 2 qualification places. So if this goes wrong, or they get undercut, or they get overtaken, it's game over now as Polane throws the car over the curve down the inside, side by side with the BMW, has the inside for the next portion of the corner. Can he get it stopped on the apex? Yes, he can. The BMW contact with Morales behind. The BMW trying to get the move done for Arts, has contact with the McLaren, and that one has put Arts firmly to the back of that little running battle pack, and that was dreadfully, dreadfully unfortunate.
Well, what it's done though is it's brought Lynn back into this. He may have this 5-second penalty, but now he's got more of an opportunity to outdo himself here and just get further clear of any cars behind, and potentially have a spot that he might not have had a couple of laps ago. It is a massive shame though to see Arts actually spin out like that and have the contact, because before that, you know, it was such an incredible battle, probably one of the best battles we've seen all day. And all it took is just that one little touch. Look how close these two are together. The McLaren's slightly leaning on the BMW, and it's like leaning on a housing estate, to be honest. It's not going to move. But then, again, little tap on the way into the right-hander. And Lynn, with that 5-second penalty hanging over him, he's going to be just outside the top 5 at this point. But look again at the closing speed into the corners. It's so amazing when you see 2 cars so different, like the BMW and the McLaren.
Yeah, it really is fabulous stuff. And Lynn, as you say, has a 5-second penalty that he'll serve during his mandatory pit stop, but he's not letting that concern him at this moment in time. The best strategy is to just keep going. So let's have a look at the replay now. So Polane, we see in the Mercedes, the BMW looks to try and get the cutback, and unfortunately that's not recognised by Morales behind. Just catches him when the car's at the point of pivoting, so it's his absolute lightest on load, and away she goes. Unfortunately, real pity for the BMW. So let's have a look a little bit further down now. So we've got Raymond in the number 11, the Bangladesh car, the Porsche. Not seeing much of Porsche at the sharp end of the grid, apart from our race leader Rubilar, who's currently running away with it, 11 laps to the good. And there is the Nigerian car that has just been overtaken. So Nigeria having a bit of a better run of it this time, despite the drama that we saw earlier in the race. It kicks it to the inside, and good driving there from Rahman to avoid turning in too early on the big old massive Bentley.
Oh, I was going to say, we call it the Boatley quite jokingly, don't we? It is an absolute machine. I actually live about a mile away from the Bentley factory. I can see it from my front window, and honestly, if you think the cars are big, you should see the factory. But honestly, it is a big old boat, is the Bentley. We absolutely love it though, because it's such an unlikely GT car. When the first ones turned up, everybody thought, what are you doing with that? And it's great to see, really good to see it. Now, it's been declared as a racing incident between these two, I've heard. Let's have a look. There's the contact down the inside, one way then the other. They're so close together, aren't they, through that point? But this is it. You just have that tiny little overlap. It's the smallest of touches, though, isn't it? I think it's quite an innocent touch, to be honest with you. You just didn't expect that sort of check-up. Yeah,
and it does take a different complexion when you ride on board with Morales. I must admit, it's not quite as dramatic a cutback from the BMW as I expected. But as you say, when the cars are so closely compacted, the accordion effect as well, they're braking while you're still accelerating. There's an unusual line being taken by the BMW from Arts in order to try and get the cutback. Sadly, these things do happen, but the upshot is Arts is still in contention, 8th position at the moment, 2.3 seconds away from Temper in position 7, and this is Temper that we're looking at now with the Morales behind him. So let's have a quick replay again. This is the Nigeria and Bangladesh, and yes, there was no gap there, but we'll put our car there anyway and just see what happens. And sadly for Nigeria, that means we face the wrong direction. So I don't really want to comment any further on that one. That was optimistic, quote unquote.
Maybe just a missing in the braking point as well, to be honest with you. It just seemed a little bit exuberant, let's say.
Yes.
But what is exuberant at the moment, I must say, is Nico Rubilar. 17-second lead over Teichmann at the moment. He is absolutely on a mission. He had a bit of a rough ride earlier in the day, didn't he, in his quarter-final, but what a fantastic performance he's putting in here. He was exciting as soon as the green flag came out, because he was half off the circuit trying to make his way around the Peruvian Ferrari, wasn't he?
Yeah, so Rubelar, of course, he was in the quarterfinal too earlier today and looked very firmly on course for a top 10 qualification spot, but then got a drive-through for early contact. We're seeing here a 5-second penalty for car number 11 for causing a collision and a warning for car number 36 for causing a collision. And of course, car number 36 being that one of Arts in the Hungarian BMW, so we're not quite sure exactly when that happened on racetrack, but maybe we'll see a replay later on. But let's focus our attention on the battle for 6th position. That is Nicholas Rubelar. We're having a look at him because we've not really seen much of him, much like his rivals.
Yeah.
You can see him in the rig, so we know he's here, but we don't really see him on the racetrack because he's 17 plus seconds to the good after 12 laps of racing.
I'm surprised he's not in the next building over by now, to be honest with you. But yeah, he's really flying his Nico Rubelar. He's properly got into that rhythm that I mentioned earlier on. You know, when a driver does get into a rhythm like that, they don't overthink everything they're doing. They just throw the car in and just do what it can do. He's dancing that Porsche around right now. And we saw earlier that the Porsche seemed really good later on in the race when it comes to the tyre life. You know, we've seen actually quite the let's call it extravagant differences between the tyre life of some of these cars. As the pit window opens, straight in comes Temper and Morales. They're just getting this done and out of the way. We mentioned the undercut has been working, and it seems that they want to try and take benefit of that as well.
Yep, so Kishimoto is the lead of the trio of cars that have come down pit lane in the Ferrari. So make note now, he is pitted from 5th position. For anybody new to Assetto Corsa Competizione, if you look at the timing stack on the left-hand side of your screen, where it's orange and number 1, that means they've not made their pit stop and they've still got 1 left to go. When it goes green, that means they've served their stop. And in fact, Kishimoto, I apologise, was 3rd when he came down pit lane. So he's gone green, that means he's served his mandatory stop. When everybody goes green, when everybody's been down pit lane, let's see if Kishimoto has managed to move himself up the running order. As Chaz said, we've been keeping an eye on it all day. The undercut coming in first is seeming to be the more successful strategy. Often you find, Chaz, it's right, isn't it, in these sort of competitions, there's 2 schools of thought. Come in as soon as the window opens, or leave it to the absolute death as the very last stop. And it can go either way. And that's why these kind of mandatory pit stop races can be quite fascinating, can't they?
Yeah, especially when the drivers only have to take a tiny amount of fuel on board. You know, they don't sort of completely determine their race strategy from the very start. They know they're only going to take a litre on. A lot of them will just have it fueled up to do the whole race, basically, and just put a litre in. They won't think, oh, we'll definitely come in straight away, or we'll definitely come in later on. They'll just see how the race is going and take it from there. And to be honest, you often see it in motorsport where the race leader and people higher up the order, they'll stay out as long as they can because, again, I come back to that whole rhythm thing. They're in a rhythm. It's going well. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. That's what we always say. So if they can continue to churn out the laps while everybody else is a little bit slower than them, unless tyre life becomes a major issue, there's no point coming in until you really have to towards the end of the pit window.
Although we have seen during the course of today that some people have left it a little bit too late and come in when the pit window closes, and that gives you a nice big tasty penalty and says goodbye to your activity. So it's that fine balance, isn't it, of making sure. Don't forget as well, this is something for anybody who's accustomed to the world of esport racing. You often see drivers, they have team managers or strategists or somebody talking in their ear, talking them through what they need to do, giving them instructions. These guys and girls are on their own. There's absolutely no support from anybody, so they've got to do the working out on the fly. And I'm going to interrupt myself for a moment because there's some big news. Morales has a drive-through penalty, which can only mean speeding in the pit lane. So Morales, 7th position on the racetrack. In fact, he was running a little bit higher than that one before the DT came on, has made a fundamental mistake in the number 15, and that is really, really bad news for his chances.
Yeah, it's been a bit of a rough ride for him in this race, hasn't it? And we've got Chanturia with a 10-second penalty as well, actually, applied on the timing tower there. So the penalty's coming thick and fast right now. We're looking at Sandro right now in the Georgia McLaren. Let's have a look back and see. Oh, sorry, no, we're not looking back. Apologies. Just going to a picture-in-picture. You can see all of the rigs.
I fell for that one as well last time.
So that's 1 each now, 1 all. But yeah, it's wonderful to get these shots. I must say, the rigging and everything that we've got going on in here, the camera operators, all the media people, it's one hell of a fantastic event. But to have all of these beautiful rigs showcased in such a way, and you can see just out the window there as well, that's how close we are to the circuit. We're right next to it. We've had cars flying past the window all day in the real world while we're on the sims. It's one hell of a place to be in it, Paul. Yeah, it really is, and it's a great experience. A lot of these drivers as well, it's really worth bearing in mind. As I say, there are drivers that have travelled from Brazil, from Japan, from China, from
all corners, Australia, all corners of the world. It's a massive undertaking for every single one of these individuals that have come, even if it's a short hop from a local European country. It's a huge thing to come and compete on this world stage, and the pressure, it's so difficult for us to articulate the pressure the drivers will be feeling to the folks at home, because as far as you're concerned, it looks just like when you're racing in a casual race from your own computer, it really is a huge deal for all concerned. We're riding on board now with Chanturia, ninth position just ahead. That is Temper to the outside, so a good run from the McLaren. Has the inside line. Temper recognises the car there, gives him a little bit late, but gives him the racing room, and Chanturia can't quite get the deal done. But that McLaren's starting to come on song a little bit. Oh, there we go. Temper loses his temper and runs out to the outside of the racetrack. And unfortunately, that is another big delay in Chanturia, trying to make up for those 10 seconds that he's going to have to serve.
Well, we did wonder if anything would bring out the pun, and there it is.
Thank you very much.
The BMW goes around, but it's that, we saw it earlier on in some of the races, that really annoying, slow, lazy slide that the car does. Not even like a half spin, but it just goes all the way around. And it takes forever to do it, but that's the thing, when these guys really want the car to rotate on the brakes, they'll run quite the rearward brake bias, so it can over-rotate on the brakes. And when you're coming into a corner like at the end of the straight there, where it tightens up, you're trying to slow the car down, then it can be an absolute nightmare. So we have car in the pits, which is Morales. He's serving his drive-through penalty. We have a few more cars still to pit. Here's a look back then at the BMW going around. This is Temper on the way in, and you'll see maybe just on a downshift or something, Paul, it's easy to unsettle the car, isn't it? Lock the diff and it just pings itself around, doesn't it? As
we said earlier, at that part of the racetrack, you're asking the car to do so much. If you just go 1 millimetre, 1 mile an hour over what it's capable of doing, you're on the absolute limit. And there it is, game over. But Chaz, I just want to draw your attention to the timing screen, the timing tower on the left-hand side. We've still got Rubelar and Polane to come down pit lane, but look, Kishimoto came in pit lane, 3rd position. He will be net 2nd when everybody else has made their stop. So coming in early doors, once again, has proven to be the strategy of choice, and that is a free track position for Kishimoto. So great bit of strategy there, as we're seeing the number 11 car of Lin just getting a little bit spicy with the lapped Nigerian machine.
And car 15, which is Morales, got the drive-through for causing a collision.
Oh, I had that down as a pit lane speed limit, but there we go, causing a collision.
I think, I must admit, I'll admit this now, but earlier on, when I mentioned that it was a racing incident, I think we were being told there's a replay of the incident by our director. So apologies for getting that all mixed up. But yeah, still penalties there, thick and fast. We've got Rahman with a drive-through penalty as well in the pits at the moment. 5-second penalty to car 37, which is Radyapov in the Ferrari, also for causing a collision. So I think the phrase argy-bargy needs to come back out again, Paul, because there's been quite a bit of it in this one, but to be honest, it's not been silly stuff. It's hard racing. There's a lot more pressure in these races. We're getting later in the competition now. You are bound to see a little bit closer racing, and drivers maybe getting their elbows out more to sort of defend the position and defend the pride.
Yeah, it's absolutely been the struffier of the races that we've seen so far today, I think, with, like you say, a few penalties, but nothing majors. We're looking now at Michael Teichmann. So we said the pit strategy, and there you go, that red car, that red dot that you can see in front of you, that is Kishimoto in the number 18 machine. So look at the gap, look at the distance he's made. I must admit, I didn't take note of the delta between the two before the pit stop started, but that's a 1.7, if you put my teeth in, advantage gained for Kishimoto. So just goes to show that strategy plays a big part in these races as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's quite strange that it does, though, in a way, isn't it? Because they're not going for full tyre changes or anything. They're literally just putting minimal fuel in so they can pass the requirement in the regulations and just get the car back out. But tiny things like how well you manage the pit entry and exactly when you slow down, those are such minute details to some people, but they can make a massive difference when you get back out.
Well, can you remember in the real world when Michael Schumacher made his debut in Formula 1, he made a point of practice, attacking pit entry, getting as fast as he possible, and nobody considered that one. The amount of free time, the amount of free time that gained him, and now it's bog standard procedure to do that. And it's very often, as esports is still a fairly growing sport. It's a young sport in comparison to motor racing, and these little advantages can still be found for those that have got the mental capacity and the foresight to practice them. So you won't do that when you're in the arena, but when you're at home, Anybody with any sense will be going down and going down and going down pit lane, lap after lap, all day, to not give up a millimetre or a tenth of a second. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tenths of a second. That can be the difference between hero and zero at a level of this competition.
You'd be amazed as well. I mean, in some of the endurance events that I've done on different sims in my time in sim racing, how little teammates actually practice pit lane entry and then cost you stuff in the race. And it's remarkable that people don't look at it as such a major part. Somehow we're already into the second half of the race, well into it. We've got 25 minutes left.
Amazing.
Since it hit about 50 minutes, I don't know where that's gone. But it's been a real belter. There's so many elements to this so far. This is a quick look back at Radyapov in the Ferrari. Just one way then the other, the Uzbekistan machine. That's that pendulum effect I mentioned earlier. When the engine is in the middle or the back of the car, if you are going through a really fast section, that's where their weaknesses really show through. When it is on deceleration and any sort of changes, even just gear shifts as well, you can throw that weight one way, and once it starts moving around the front, while they have a lot of grip front-ended cars like that, it just doesn't have the capability to hold on. And then when it suddenly snatches again, horrible effect, and it throws it the other way.
Yeah, that's put Radyapov to the back of the field, and also a 5-second time penalty on top of it that he's still carrying to add insult to injury. But again, learning experience, great experience to be here at the FIA Motorsport Games. And some of these drivers, anybody that's familiar with Assetto Corsa Competizione and the competitive esports aspect of it, there'll be a lot of new names for you to look at on your screen. And let's not forget, you might be thinking, oh, well, 12th, 13th position, that's not what they're looking for. It is sensational experience for the drivers, and every good driver will take something away from every time they're on track. This may be the first time they've been in an environment where they're in an arena, maybe the first time they've been at an event of this scale, broadcast to this size of an audience. That's learnings that will make you stronger, irrespective of where you finish this competition at close of play tomorrow afternoon. So again, 13th position with a 5-second penalty, but it's invaluable, the lessons that will have been learned throughout the course of preparation and the actual event itself.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, whether it be international motorsport or club level motorsport, you speak to a driver in a paddock and ask them how their weekend's going. The one thing they will always tell you is it's seat time. And seat time is more important than anything else. No
and competitive seat time as well, because in sim racing you can hot lap, but that doesn't beat a competition.
Exactly. But even in the sim and even here in an environment like this, seat time is still king. That is the main thing. At the end of the day, if you come into an event like this and you've done 5 laps of Paul Ricard compared to someone that's done 500 laps of Paul Ricard, one of you is always going to have an advantage. No matter how talented you are, how good you are, that is always going to be king. And I mean, you can see in the way these guys are lapping at the moment. I mean, Teichmann's laps earlier, he was doing 55.7, I think, is his best time, and he was doing 55.8s constantly. You know, they're just hot lapping time and time again, but they're doing it while chasing other cars and focusing on what they're doing. It's remarkable stuff.
And speaking of Michael Teichmann, that's the Mexico car that you see on your screen now. He's starting to close down Kishimoto, not by huge chunks, but 10th by 10th, corner by corner. He's starting to reel that Ferrari in. And I'm going to pose a question to you, Chaz. 22 minutes, 44 seconds left on the clock. You need to be in the top 5 to progress. Do you bother? Or do you keep a watching brief, put him under pressure without really risking your car in a manoeuvre, see if you can make a mistake? Or you're a racing driver and the better result you get now is the better qualifying spot you got tomorrow?
Well, a lot of the time they do have similar timing like this on their screens that they can also look at as well. And I think, to be honest with you, if I was Teichmann right now and I looked at Pilane and then Lynn behind and it's over 10 seconds, I'd probably just try and keep the pace the same. I wouldn't push to improve it time and time again. Obviously, everybody wants to be as fast as they want to be. You try telling racing drivers and sim racers to slow down, you know, it's just not going to happen. But, you know, they're doing the job at the moment, and that's all they need to do. I mean, speaking of doing the job, 22.2 seconds now for Nico Rublev. This is just mad.
Nico Rublev's going that fast that he's actually at Motorsport Games 2023. 24, sorry, he's that far in front. But I just want to take you back a second to position 5, Lynn. He had that 5-second penalty, let's remember, that he served at his pit stop, and he was in the kind of danger zone of dropping outside of that vital top 5. But the pace he showed, the aggression he continued pushing, trying to move his way forward, trying to overtake, is paying absolute dividends. Not only is he in 5th, but he's a country mile ahead of Arts in 6th position. So Lynn, let's take a moment to appreciate that performance, because that's pretty spectacular in the BMW.
Well, on top of that, I'm going to point to your grid sheet. He started last.
Yeah, 30,
Third at the back
exactly.
of the grid. It's just an absolutely top-notch performance. And like you say, he is a country mile ahead of Arts at the moment, so he's not got too much to worry about. Here's the Bahamas McLaren. The tail was wiggling on it there. That's going to heat up the rears for Dominic Robinson into the left-hander, or just a little bit too hot on the way in, and it's got that lazy slide about it on the marbles on the outside of the circuit. And that's, again, that pendulum effect.
So, how much of that one is a little bit of mental fatigue as well from the driver? Because we touched on it at the top of the show, didn't we? These guys have already done minimum a 1 hour race today. Tons of practice. It's a hot day at Paul Ricard. We're in a foreign country. We're in a different... Oh, no. Dear, oh dear, oh dear, that...
Oh, and then Morales involved as well.
I don't have words. That was very disappointing, actually.
Yeah, that was the Uzbekistan Ferrari, I believe, that got hit out the way as well of Eldor Radyapov.
So that's unfortunate. It's when there's too many cars in too small a space, and unfortunately everybody's running so tight together, and that's got big consequences for a lot of the drivers. So real shame to see that one. Now we're looking at Rubelar again. So in case you don't recognise it, folks, that's the Chilean Porsche. You may not have seen that one any time from 58 minutes and 30 seconds onwards, because he's gone and checked himself out. Look, he's even got time for a smile at the camera. Good lad. That's a man that's on the top of his game at this moment in time, as Rubelar tries to put a lap on that Ferrari now as we're coming into fastest corner on the racetrack, and the Ferrari does not see the Porsche.
Oh my goodness
catch the car, Nicholas. Keep going now. Look at the concentration. No smiling now. Gets the car started again, back in the first gear on the acceleration. Thank goodness he has got a massive gap. But that just goes to show, Chaz Draycott, that anything can happen. And unfortunately for Radyapov, that was an inattentive moment that could have had sensationally big consequences.
Well, I was going to defend the Bahamas car before about the fact that, you know, a lot of these drivers, they won't be used to looking out for traffic or letting people through in that way.
Yeah,
they won't have had that environment before, but that was unbelievable. Like, I thought he was just going to back out. We were going to see it again. So obviously Nico all the way over on the right-hand side, Radyapov all the way over on the left, but at this point he should just be lifting off. Just let the Porsche go, let him have the pace. But he's just kept his foot in, and then he turns in like the Porsche's not there. And
the thing is, you can see the Porsche in your front quarter now, can't you? Because he's more than alongside. The radar in the car will be telling you there's somebody alongside. The blue flags will be waving.
Yeah.
And they've got headsets on as well, so they don't hear our gormless voices going over the air. So they can hear the engine of the car singing. Yeah. At this level, there's no... Frankly, I'm going to be a little bit harsh, but there's no excuse for that.
That
was really poor driving, and we all make mistakes, but you cannot be doing that to drivers that are leading a race and leading by a country mile as well. Just thank goodness for Nico Rubelar that he has got such an advantage that's not actually going to cost him, I don't think. And it also, I will say, damn fine catch from Rubelar as well, because that was a little bit of a play days bus. That was seesaw to try and keep the car out of the wall. So, yeah. Wow, can I have 5 minutes, please, to have a lie down, because that was a bit much.
Well, what I was going to point out as well was that the fact that when Teichmann and Kishimoto came into shot, they were glued together a moment ago, despite the straight line speed of that Ferrari. Teichmann was right up behind him, just at the end of this straight that they're back onto now. But of course, what Rubelar will want, whether that car is damaged or not, is for these two to start fighting again now, and Teichmann looks like he is going to be reining them in. You asked a moment ago, would you bother, when there was about 22 minutes left? It's only been 5 minutes since then, and now he's starting to get right with him. He's within a second, he's within the slipstream. Yes, it's not the strongest thing in the world, but it still helps in a car like that BMW, especially when he's chasing that slippery little Ferrari in front. But this is a certain battle, I'm sure, now that's going to take us into the last 15 minutes of this race.
Absolutely. So while these two are squabbling, we'll keep half an eye on the lap times of Rubelar ahead, just to see if he's carrying any significant damage. Damage is enabled, of course, in the server for this competition. So it is very easily, as we all know, me in particular, that you can bend the car, get it out of shape. It starts to eat your tyres up. It starts to cause a little bit of drama, as we're looking now. That is the battle for second and third positions for Teichmann now, really closing on the back of Kishimoto. So Rubelar will have eyes like dustbin lids at this stage. He'll be listening to the noises. He'll be feeling the car. The first time that you go through Signa with a car that you don't know if it's straight, that is an airplane accident if it goes wrong there, isn't it? And then you contact the wall at speed, it is game over. So,
for sure.
Yeah, this is a real test, actually. I'm interested to see. We've seen that Rubelar can come back from adversity by getting into this last chance and then leading. We can see that he's lightning fast by pulling away. can he keep his head
Yeah.
under the biggest of pressures? That's the next question that's going to get answered.
It certainly is. Now, the gap was 14.5 seconds last time they went through any of the timing beams, and that was as they crossed the start-finish line as well, and it was 14.5 seconds before that. So I imagine now, if Kishimoto feels any sort of pressure from Teichmann, that gap will stay around the same, although it's gone down by about half a second in the first sector. There might be certain points on the track where the Porsche is a little bit weaker maybe than the Ferrari, but we'll have to keep our eye on it, like you say, Paul. But I think right now Kishimoto is going to be keeping his eyes on the mirrors and looking at that big green BMW. I was going to say that Teichmann's going to do his best to fill the mirrors. Probably filling them from there, to be honest, isn't he?
Yeah, really, with a car like that one, you really don't need to worry too much. Exactly. But I mean, just for anybody that's coming into this broadcast a little bit late, watching from home, firstly, hello, thank you for joining us. If you're wondering why it's important, because top 5, what's getting you through, so why is it important to fight for first, second and third? The higher you finish in this race, the higher your grid spot will be for the semi-finals tomorrow. And again, quite stacked grids tomorrow. The drivers go through into the final where we're awarding the trophy. So anything you can do to help your prospects of starting without hindering the possibility of even getting to those semi-finals is absolutely vital. So yes, you might think, oh, if I'm Teichmann, just hold on to third and get your ticket. Second means you've not got to try and pass that fella again tomorrow when the big day comes. And we know how hard it's to pass because he's followed him for 45 minutes.
Well, exactly. And at the end of the day, they're this close together, this late in the race as well. You would usually expect the field to be concertinaed in the early parts of a race, and that's where more overtaking manoeuvres happen. So if you can do it at the end of this one, it means that you've just got that slight advantage in the start of the next one, because all it could take is a really good start from Kishimoto if they finished as they were, and he could just extend any sort of gap that he's got over Teichmann, and that would be it. It's all theoretical at this point, of course, but that's what will be going through, Michael said.
And you've got a mental advantage as well.
Of course.
You pass today, and your rival, should you come to be racing the same piece of time like tomorrow, thinks, I've already been beaten once by this point.
Exactly.
And the mental game, when the gaps are so small and the levels so even, cannot be underestimated. Getting your rival's head, give him a reason to think he's one step below you for whatever reasons. We're seeing now the Bangladesh car of Rahman, 11th position, trying to find the way past the Bentley in the top 10. So the Nigeria, actually, despite their trials and tribulations, are running in a strong position in P10 and having quite the race further down the order.
They are indeed. And what's continually catching my eye is the fact that the splitters and the diffusers and everything on that Bentley are bright white as well. It's certainly a striking look, really, to have all of the carbon underneath the car painted like that as well. But to be honest, it's probably like a bit of a dazzle camouflage mechanism for any car that comes up behind him, because I don't think I'd want to drive up to the back of that splitter, to be honest with you. It's like having 6 lanes on a motorway staring at you. But this is a big attack by now, Rahman. Down the inside again, runs deep on the exit. And, well, Akin Oligbade is going to say, thank you very much indeed. I'm going to go back down the inside. Runs a little bit deep himself, though, and the Porsche gets the run on the exit. Now we go back to Kishimoto in second place, Teichmann behind him. But just wait a second and look in the background. Pilane, 2.8 seconds back now on these guys. Is he going to close in by the end of this race if these two start? Well, if they start battling, of course. But if it stays like this and they remain at a similar pace, I'm not sure he will. Back to these guys, though, side by side.
Yeah, and interestingly, have a look who's behind them. So we've got some lap trap, they've got some cars coming to lap them as well, a little bit further down the running order, which always makes things a little bit dramatic. Now, as we see, there we go, the Nigerian car goes to the inside, doesn't have quite enough room, has to get out of it quite aggressively actually there, does well to keep the car balanced. And on the racetrack, Kishimoto, once again, the man under pressure from Teichmann behind. So Kishimoto now starting to struggle as we're coming into the final portion of the race. That Ferrari's struggling a little bit for lap time overall in comparison to Teichmann. The advantage has got the Ferrari all day long has been rapid in a straight line, and that's what you need here at Paul Ricard to defend, isn't it? Yeah,
definitely. I mean, the Ferrari as a GT3 car has always been very slippery in a straight line. It's a beautifully elegant shape. It's a great looking race car as well. But that straight line advantage has been amazing. The gap now, though, to Pilane has gone down to 1.5 seconds.
Wow.
So he's starting to get really close to slipstream range here. Here's a look back at the Hungarian BMW. That's arced down the inside of Robinson, and he gives him a bit of a love tap into the chicane. And again, we see lap traffic interfering with cars on the lead lap, and it's a shame to see it. But I think sometimes it comes down maybe to a bit of inexperience and maybe just not quite running as much with lap traffic, I suppose.
Yeah. And it's such a shame. Arts has had such a strong day today, such a strong race today as well. But a few dramas have kind of kept him nestled away from the top 5, but he's in 6th position. He's not in contention time-wise, but any kind of problems befall the 5 cars ahead of him, and all of a sudden, thank you very much, he is your ticking sunshine. See you again tomorrow. So Arts is going to be keeping on the up and up, as we're seeing. The Chaz pointing to the screen there. Robinson in the number 14 has a 5-second time penalty against his name, and if you're wondering how we're going to serve these 5-second penalties, by the way, it will be added to the overall race time of the checkered flag. If it happened before they made their mandatory stop, they could take it when the car's stationary in pit road, but because we've gone past that stage in the competition, it will be added at the conclusion of this race. So just like real world motorsport, however they cross the line, won't quite be how they're classified in the end, which is always fun and games, but lucky for us, it concerns cars that are well outside the top 5 fight. So materially, no real dramas at this stage.
There's going to be dramas in a second. We've got the Uzbekistan Ferrari here, just ahead of the Peruvian car that's all over the road. Kishimoto completely sideways, but then Teichmann and Pilane, 9 tenths and then 7 tenths separated behind this machine. So this is going to get very, very feisty now. We need the Uzbekistan Ferrari of Radjapov to get out of the way here. He needs to be wise about when he lets these guys through. They're coming up to the straight, so hopefully he'll just move over and let them by. But yeah, Paul's just pulling her faces and saying, maybe. But look at Pilane. If he could even finish second in this race, that would be absolutely mind-blowing. Look at the run they've got, though, on the Ferrari. That makes life easier, and that makes it a lot easier for them in a straight line as well. But watch this Mercedes now when it kicks up a gear. All of a sudden, it's just going to be like it's got a rocket attached to the back of it, and around the BMW he goes. It's going to be on the inside for the right-hander, though, Paul. Interesting little move, that, because we've seen it work around the outside so much. Can he be late enough to get it down the inside? And
don't forget as well, the track started to rubber up. There's marbles on the side of the racetrack. The tyres have started to go away as well. The car's much lighter than it was earlier in the competition. So it's a changing balance all the time for these drivers, and you can never quite be 100% confident where things are at compared to the last time you tried a similar such move. And Pilane has had a sensational race at this point, but he'll be well aware he's in the top 4 and he would love a podium, but you've got to be a little bit restrained at this stage, and if you're going to make a move that you know is going to stick. And Senior's not the kind of corner where you can make any guarantees whatsoever, as Pilane now looks to the inside in the final turn, gets the car turned in very nicely indeed. That was a great move from Pilane for 3rd position. Got the car to the inside, nice and early, telegraphed the move in advance, and now he's on the defensive, and Teichmann trying to find a way past. Once again, the green BMW behind doesn't have enough run. Coming down into T1, slots back in to the position behind the Mercedes. He's going to have another go as we get down to the end of the Mulsanne straight, but my goodness me, that was very nice indeed.
Very tidy, absolutely. We've seen a lot of drivers go down the inside there into that final corner and just let the car run out wide, and the car that they've been overtaking has then gone, all right, I'll just get a bit of a cutback, you know, I'll let you go down the inside, get the run on the exit. But he got on the power early and let that slide the car out to the exit, so by the time he'd already hit the curb on the left hand side, he was already up to pace, and it was a really well executed manoeuvre that by Pilane, and he's into a podium position after the spin he had earlier. That is, I mean, you can hear the smile in his voice. It's just brilliant.
I mean, it's hard to look past the performance of Rubelar at the front of the field.
For sure.
But for me, Pilane is almost the man of the match, the driver of the day in this event, because as you say, I would have very happily, not happily is the wrong word, but I would confidently counted him out. And now look, now we're looking at Kishimoto, so he fancies he's not bothered about a podium. I'll have second will do me nicely. I'm collecting positions, and here goes another one. Will he go to the inside? Yes, he will, nice and early. South Africa late on the brakes. Pilane keeps the car to the inside. Has he got enough grip? No, he doesn't. Contact with Kishimoto. A half spin for the Mercedes, but he gets the car back on the track. The crowd making some noise in the background here as well. Pilane, very fortunate actually for that not to be a lot worse. And that, Chaz, exactly what we're talking about the car is underneath you is not as compliant as it was at the start of the race, and that would have worked 10 laps ago, but he just ran out of grip, understeered to the side.
Just bounced off the Ferrari, unfortunately. It's such a painful moment. I mean, he's still right in the fight, don't get me wrong. If anything, it's brought the three of them all closer together in the long run, but we've got 7 minutes of this race left to go, so we've still got a handful of laps left. But yeah, that was a real shame, that, to be fair. But again, it's just two drivers racing each other hard, trying to give as minimal room as possible while giving room for racing. And all it takes is for one to understeer wide, one to maybe oversteer on the way in, and the car points further in than they wanted it to. and then that little bit of contact can make such a difference. And we pointed out before as well that the Bahamas driver Robinson is out of the race now. He's out of the rig, we saw a moment ago. But there is that little tiny tap again. But to be fair, he got away with that quite well, actually. It seems like the white lines are painted over the top of the car there.
And a cloaking enabled while we come off the racetrack. So he's got all the tricks in the book this weekend. But there was nothing malicious in that, was there? It was purely just a case of not quite enough racetrack for two cars with the grip levels they've got. But look, you know you're having a damn good day when you have that kind of incident and then you go straight to the back of the car in front again. So, round one didn't work. Well, let's have another pop. To the inside again. We've learnt some lessons from last time round. We know where the grip is. We know where the car is underneath. No doubt Teichmann's maybe a little bit more circumspect than he was last time. Gives him a little bit more room as the drag race in to the right-hander now. Pretty much neck and neck. Polarne slowed the car down a little bit more. Kept it a little bit tighter. First time didn't work, but we'll have a crack second time and get the job done, I reckon.
Absolutely lovely stuff. Absolutely lovely. It just looked so tidy. And, you know, hats off to Teichmann as well.
Yeah.
He's probably seen the battling going on. He just thought, right, I'm in the top 5. We've got a good old gap behind us to Lynn. Maybe I don't need to fight this too hard. He's seen that, of course, there has been contact a few times by now for Polarne. He's seen that Kishimoto doesn't want to give up that gap as well. And he's just thinking, right, you have that, you go and have your battle, because, I mean, at the end of the day, he could be thinking, if these guys fight in front of me, they could knock each other off the road and I could get second place.
And that's exactly what I do. Bear in mind, I've got no talent, so I'm in nowhere near that position.
Oh, yeah,
but if it was me and I was in Teichmann's shoes, I wouldn't fancy attacking Kishimoto and putting the risk factor in, but I'd fancy second. So you're exactly right. Let Polarne, who's got all the speed in the world and all the aggression in the world at this moment in time, let him have a tick. You sit behind. You know you're qualified in 4th, and you never know, you might pick up yourself a tasty little morsel, and I think that's exactly what Teichmann's doing, and that, I love to see that. That's a thinking man's racing driver.
It is, yeah. Well, I mean, like you just said there, I too, no talent, so, you know, when I say I'm letting people past, you know,
yeah, exactly.
I'm driving my heart out, and they're just going past me, and I'm, saying, oh, it's all strategy, this. But yeah, to be honest with you, Polarne's been so impressive. I think he's going to be fired up now and he's going to think, right, I have to go for second. I'm not just going to settle for third here. But look at the push he's got off the corner. You did mention before that the Ferrari was starting to struggle a bit. If anything, on the complete flip side, that Mercedes seems like one of the cars that really looks after its tyres. And both of these machines have been rapid in a straight line. But now, when you've got a rapid Ferrari and an already quick Mercedes being given slipstream by the fastest car there, well, that Mercedes, he's probably going to hit Mach 1 in a minute when he goes down the straight. He's going to boom as he goes past the building. There's the building we're in on the right-hand side. But then we go into the right-hand side. God, no one would want to make a virtual version of me. Flipping out. But look how close they are under brakes. That's the bravery, though, isn't it?
Now, that was really interesting. The Mercedes got a better launch off the corner. So the initial phase of that acceleration zone on the straight, the Mercedes had the advantage in that. Just be quiet, Paul, for a moment, because there's an overtaking manoeuvre happening. And Polarne decides, I can't do it on the straight. I can't get him on turning. I'll have a go in the middle of the corner, because you know what? I am the master of this track today. And Polarne, again, showing his mastery of that track. Phase 1 didn't work, Phase 2 didn't work, so we'll have it in Phase 3. And that was absolutely beautiful.
And ironically enough, through Phases 1, 2 and 3, he remains unfazed as well.
Hey.
Absolutely smashing it. You know, not a complete change in facial expression, just pure concentration, and he is cracking on with the job. 3 minutes left of this race, Paul. I don't know where that's gone, but Nico Rubelart, well, he's 21.6 seconds clear at the front of the field now. He's having an absolute belter of a race. The guys behind, though, this is still not finished yet. There's a lovely look outside. You can see actual GT3 cars on track outside the window. How cool is that? Only here at the Motorsport Games.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. FIA Motorsport Games 2022 here at the circuit Paul Ricard. We're in the Fanatec Esports Cup here at Mistral, hole number 1 at the circuit, as Chaz says, right next to the racetrack as well. You've got a fantastic view. The drivers have got a fantastic opportunity to represent their nation, and this is the last chance qualifying race number 1. We've got another one coming straight after this one, so please don't think, oh good, there we go, I'm over and done with, I can go and make a cup of tea. Stick around, because we're coming back for race number 2 after this. And we suggested the racing today's been great up to this point, and it's kind of like it'd just be our luck for it to be a little bit of a damp squid when we get a turn on the comms box.
Of course.
But it's been pretty good, hasn't it? I've enjoyed this.
Yeah, well, that's it. I think early on in the race, it did look like, I mean, you mentioned it yourself, that it was going to be a little bit tentative. Drivers were maybe going to just hang back a bit and not push as hard as they possibly could. But then when it came to it and they thought, right, we really need to scrap here and get on with this, that's when they started getting the elbows out. The pit strategies came around. and they really got on with the job at hand.
Yeah, brilliant stuff. So at this moment in time, then 1 minute 42 seconds left on the clock. Nicolas Rubelar, the man from Chile, in the Porsche, is our race leader. We suggested he may have damage from that bit of drama with one of the back markers earlier on. That's not showing in lap time whatsoever, as he's got that lead back up to 21 seconds. Over man of the moment is Polane in P2. He's been up down like a yo-yo, but now finally has settled in on the second rung at the podium with 1 minute and 16 left on the clock. And Kishimoto had a quiet race, looked like he was losing a little bit of pace, I think it's fair to say, earlier on, but he's dug deep and found something extra in that Ferrari. So he's holding on to the podium. But I reckon Teichmann's still got a little bit left to give in the final 60 seconds.
I think he might try and still throw something at it in the last lap just to get that grid position. If he's got the opportunity, I love the phrase that you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Yes.
And I think that that's going to be going through his mind right now, just obviously in Mexican if it's different. But to be honest with you, he's got to try something, even if it's just a case of don't risk too much, just put your nose down the inside into a corner and just fill that mirror just for a moment, just to make him think that you're going for a last-ditch effort. Yep. Even if you're not, all it can do is upset the driver in front. Nico Rubelar's so chill right now, down the straight for one more time, one-handed on the wheel for a moment. This is just another day at the office for him. He's such an impressive driver. Yeah, I've seen him on all sorts of sims, from over on Gran Turismo to iRacing and now here on ACC. He's just one of them drivers that can be quick on anything.
Yeah, he really can, and he's so composed. You say he's still got one little bit of jeopardy to go. There is a Porsche further up the road that he's about to put a lap on. That must be Rahman in 11th position. He'll probably not quite get to that car, though, before we get to the checkered flag. Maybe he'll just throttle down a little bit to allow himself enough space as he comes through the final section in the first last chance qualification race. Nicolas Rubelar from Chile started at the front, had a bit of drama, and has absolutely walked away from this one. So the final time now for the rundown into the final corner. Spot the braking zone, get the car turned in nice and early, hit the loud pedal, accelerate to the line, see the checkered flag, arm up in the air. Nicolas Rubelar is our winner for Chile in a dominant drive in this last qualification race. The crowd applaud. We see sensational driving all the time, and that Chaz Draycott is right at the very top of what I've seen recently.
Well, I mean, you said it yourself, Paul, you know, the fact that he could keep his head later in the race after what happened with the Uzbekistan Ferrari, gave it a couple of seconds away at the end, but Polane finishing second is just amazing. Kishimoto in third, Teichmann finishes in fourth, and it looks like it is going to be Hugh Min Lin that is going to make it through in that number 11 BMW. He is indeed, and from the back of the grid, considering the contact he had, the battles he had to go through, we have had an amazing race from a number of our drivers in there. You know, I mean, all of them in the top 5 had their own different episode of a race, and it was just awesome to watch. We've still got battles going on further down. This is just for a bit of bragging rights. Now we've got Felix Temper chasing down Chanturia in the Georgia McLaren. Two red and white machines making their way through the final sector once more. And the big, beefy, angry-looking BMW closing in bit by bit, but I don't think it's going to be enough here, Paul. But still, that's the first one of them done. We've still got another one to go. I
know, fantastic stuff. So Temper might not get the position on the trike, but don't forget that Chanturia ahead has a 10-second penalty, so he will inherit that position once everything sorts itself out on the timing screen. So Austria, Felix Temper had a good race, but unfortunately didn't quite have enough in the tank to get the job done. And as you said, Chaz, phenomenal drive from the entirety of the field, actually, but certainly for the top 5 in particular. And you can see a piece of sweat there on the forehead from the South African, as it's really, it's hot in here anyway, but it's just the concentration, isn't it? You might think, oh, well, they sat down, it can't be that physical, but my, oh my, it really is. When you are concentrating on the limit for so long, it's phenomenal driving from everybody.
It really is. And, you know, to do it in that pressurised environment that we've mentioned and we'll continue to mention over the course of the weekend, you know, when you're here in the rigs, and even when you're battling a driver that's sat 3 to 4 feet away from you in identical equipment, you know, you can often say that you're in identical equipment in terms of the car that you're driving in the sim. But when you're doing that in the sim and you've got an identical bit of hardware next to you as well, that's what makes it so exciting. You know that there's no technical advantage like that over the driver with you, but you've just got to all play it in the mind games, and it's epic stuff. There's your race winner, Nico Rubelar. He's going to be a very happy boy, and that's a flip side compared to his quarterfinal, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So that was the first of the last chance races, and some might say it's the last chance race coming up next. So don't go anywhere at all, everybody at home. We will be back again with our final throw of the dice here at the FIA Motorsport Games 2022, the Fanatec Esports Cup. See you very soon indeed. From Chaz and I, bye-bye.
Prova. Arrivo su quello, infatti vedi che gli altri li sta chiudendo. Questo deve essere l'1, e invece vedi che parlo col 2 mi chiude l'1. Lo vedi sulla che funziona così. Contrario. Questo è il 2, questo è il 2, questo è l'1, scusa, questo è l'1, questo è l'1, questo è il 2. Sì, è molto più netta. Guarda che roba. Invece riportami su. Prova. Sì, è molto più. Sì, deve essere più. Vado a riportare questi che dobbiamo partire. Prova a lasciarlo così. Su questa linea e vedere come viene.
To the FIA Motorsport Games last chance qualifying race 2 here at the Fanatec Esports Cup. We are still at the beautiful circuit of Paul Ricard. I'm still Paul Jeffrey, and alongside me is still Chaz Draycott even. Chaz, how are you, sir? And have you recovered from what was an incredibly good first race?
Just about, to be honest. It was an absolute wonder of racing, wasn't it? We really enjoyed ourselves in that one. And to be honest, after such a great race like that, what's the best thing we could do? Do it all again.
All over again. That's absolutely right. So this is the second last chance race, the final last chance race of this competition, where we're looking to take 12 drivers onto the track and carry 5 through to the semi-finals tomorrow afternoon. The drivers, as you can see, are in their cockpits on site, doing some last-minute preparation before the green flag falls. And Chaz, do you want to tell us all about what we've got in store for us over the next 60 minutes or so of broadcast?
Well, we're going to have some drivers that start to either break away or get stuck in battle packs, and there's going to be a big divide in the field between that. We've seen it multiple times where certain cars start off strong, and then other cars are really good at getting through the pack later on in the race, really good at sort of looking after the tyres over the long run. We're going to have different pit strategies in terms of just how early people pit, I should say. There's not really much in the way of, some people take tyres, some don't. They literally just put a splash of fuel in and then go straight back out. And it's going to be quite interesting to see how that mixes things up. I mean, we mentioned it in that first last chance qualifier earlier on. All they're doing is putting minimum amount of fuel in, but somehow they make such a difference, those pit stops, don't they? Just down to pit entry and pit exit and how you absolutely nail it.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, when you're in pit lane as well, even though you're not putting fresh tyres on, the temperatures are dropping in the car. So it's who can accommodate that change in the balance of the vehicle and get back on their outlap, so to speak, faster than the others. There's big opportunities to be found on the racetrack, as you say, in the strategy, and keeping you cool in what will be, I would argue, for the vast majority of the drivers in this field, the highest stake race that they've undertaken in their entire esports virtual racing career, and we've still got tomorrow to go. So it really is. There's 12 drivers, and we're going to say goodbye to over half of them today.
Yeah.
That's big pressure.
It really is, and we spoke about it on the formation lap of the first race that, I was saying there's not really much pressure on the drivers at the back, but technically there is, because they have to move forward. They have to go and get those positions further up the order and make that progress. The drivers at the front have the pressure by having to hold on to the position they've already got. They're the ones that have got the slight benefit of starting at the front of the grid, but we saw in that last race, Pilane made his way through the pack not once but twice after big spins and big moments, so it shows that drivers with the right caliber can do it, and we have one on this grid especially that we're going to keep our eye on that really needs to go and do that as well, and that's the man starting at the back, the Italian Luca Lossio, because he ran out of fuel at the end of his quarter-final race on just it was minuscule margins, wasn't it? And that's, I was saying to the guys backstage earlier, that's all it comes down to, even in real world motorsport, even in sim racing.
And that's the thing, and that just goes to show as well a little bit of how fine the drivers are cutting the margins, that they're not giving themselves 1 or 2 laps worth of fuel more than they need, because they can't afford to give up that lap time to their rivals around. So we're just doing the quick run through the grid at this moment in time. It's a rolling start, of course, as is always the case. And the man that's going to start on pole position, representing Israel, is Denis Gribov, should I say, from Klemenjug in second place for Slovenia. Then we've got Yunho Park for South Korea, ahead of Hakon Jakobsen for Iceland in position 4, car number 28. Andreas Gruberevs for Latvia, car number 7, lines up in P5. In 6th position for Kosovo is Visar Gikale. In 7th place for Ukraine is David Pashtikov. And in position 9 for Albania is Andrea Gekoa. And in 10th for the United Arab Emirates, sorry, should have put my teeth in for a second, is Sultan Abdul Rahman. Then 11th, Kuwait for Rashid Al-Shadan. And then, as you say, that man, Luca Lossio, representing Italy, is 12th and last, despite the fact he was running in 9th place in the earlier quarter-final races and ran out of fuel on the very last lap. So, Lossio, keep your eye on that Lamborghini. We've not seen Lamborghinis really at the sharp end, really, come checkered flag. But Lossio's got lap time to spare, but can he stay out of trouble? Can he keep it for the stint?
Well, that's the question. And to be honest with you, a number of people that we spoke to have all said that, and you've had confirmation of it yourself, that the Lamborghini is quick if you can handle it.
Yeah.
It's a very lively car. It's very easy to oversteer and just overdo it and spin. And we've seen it at the end of the straight today that some cars do break away, not quite through the right-hander straight away, but it's when they're getting onto the brakes and then going down the gears, they can just snatch the rear end around, and it's got that really lazy, horrible spin that we've seen. But we have 2 Lamborghinis on the grid here, Pashtikov and Lossio. It's going to be interesting to see the difference in just those 2 cars as well. We've got Pashtikov starting right in the middle of the field, and then, of course, Lossio starting right at the back as well. We have, as well, of course, Mr. Octavio Araujo Pisco in the Porsche, car 23. Great looking car, to be honest with you. Very, very good looking machine. He's the, I believe, the Albanian driver. Andorran driver. It's the Albanian McLaren I was thinking of. Apologies, that's Gioca just behind him. But those are 2 drivers that I'm keeping my eye on in this one, because I think earlier in their races they didn't really get a chance to shine as much as we would have thought they did. So there's a few drivers in here that are just outside of that top 5 as we get things underway that could definitely break into a progressing position at least.
And a drive that I'm interested in keeping my eye on as well is Park for South Korea, starting third on the grid in a Honda NSX. Now that car finished in 12th position in the main quarter-final races earlier today, so we know he's got some speed. He's in a good place on the grid, but the Honda is one of the older cars in GT3 regulations, not necessarily a favoured vehicle in Esports competition in Assetto Corsa Competizione. So, question for me is, Will Park, does he have enough in the locker to hold on to that third place or possibly even move a little bit further forward? I think for me, that's going to be absolutely fascinating over the next 60 minutes.
Absolutely, like you say, it's a car that we don't really see that much of. It seems like Pashtakov's in the pit lane, though, for some reason in his Lamborghini. We are going to restart things, so we've just had that confirmed here, so we'll have a few minutes. But yeah, you're absolutely right. The Honda is going to be the car to watch, I think, because it's not an unknown quantity, but it is one that we don't always see at top level competition. I remember a point where that was the car where everybody was saying it's mad fast, but you just have to be a lunatic to drive it because it's such a handful when you have a setup on it that makes it as fast as a lot of the other cars are. It's so unpredictable and it's such a lively thing that it takes the right sort of driver. And I think that's a curveball for this competition as well, isn't it? Because that is going to behave so much differently over the course of a stint than all the cars around it. And again, we mentioned it in the race that's just gone. Pit strategy is so important when you come down pit lane, how the car responds to you over the course of a stint. So we saw the Mercedes came on strong at the end of the stint in the last race. The Ferrari that started strong seemed to lose a little bit of the dynamicism that it had earlier because it's a little bit more difficult to handle. So where the Honda's quite a compliant car, I think it's fair to say. It doesn't excel in any one area, but it's not weak in any one area. It's kind of like standard all the way through. Is that a solid platform in which to go forward from in this race? And that's going to be a really interesting question. We're so lucky that we're on site here. You see the picture-in-picture of the drivers, how concentrated Park was as well. He's so focused on the job in hand, isn't he? Yeah, he really is. We caught sight of him earlier on in some of the races, and he just looks so determined. You know, there's some of the drivers, you see a bit of change in facial expression every so often. You know, you can see that they're a little bit more relaxed, and you can see the physical emotion of what's going on in the race around them. But other drivers, they just get stone-faced completely, and they just stare into the distance of what they're doing. You know, they don't take anything in around them. But in an environment like this is kind of what you want. You want to be able to block out everything around you. Some of them take it on board and really enjoy the fact that they're in such a high-passion environment. But again, it's all a personal thing, depends on everyone's preferences and so on. But you mentioned the platform about a car being stable underneath you. It's not only the fact that the car is then good throughout the race and looks after the tyres well, but it gives the driver confidence to push later in the race as well. And if you amplify that and put those things together, you've got a very, very potent racer towards the end. We saw a very graphic example of that in the last race with Polana in the Mercedes, where earlier in the race, the front end was very positive. He could keep it nice and tight to the inside of the corner, and he could sort of turn a little bit more than his rivals, which gave him track position and overtaking manoeuvres. Then towards the end, when the grip wasn't quite there, the balance had changed because there was less fuel in the car. It was a little bit more unstable, a little bit more understeering, and that caused the incident that was sort of 2/3 distance mark of the race. Whereas if the Honda, as you say, if that does stay fairly even keel all the way through, confidence is the word that you mentioned, and that's a great example. The confidence that the driver knows, I can attack. I can make a manoeuvre and be confident in what the car's going to do underneath me. Maybe it's not net as strong as those around me, but if it does it every single time, that's a big advantage as we're now underway at last on the formation lap. And, well, I said it last time and I was proven right, so I'm going to say it again. Let's live the dream. This is going to be a ding-dong race. For the next 60 minutes, these 12 drivers are going to give everything they've got to give for that chance to be in the top 5 and in tomorrow's competition. Absolutely. Yeah, they really are. We did mention at the start of the last one that they were holding back a little bit by the look of it in the opening laps, just to establish their position on the road, just make it through the opening few corners where we know there can often be issues in these sorts of races. But then when they get into that rhythm, they can just crack on. They know exactly who they're racing and for what positions they're racing. And that's when you just take it a lap at a time, each page at a time. You know, these races can be written like a book sometimes, and there can be spoilers at the end that you don't know about yet. But as long as you write the first few pages and just take your time with it, then all you need to do is just turn the page, try the next lap out, and just know before you go into it whether you're going to push or whether you're just going to try and sit where you are. And if you're in the top 5, of course, just hold that position and keep it tight.
And that's a beautiful analogy, actually, and it's absolutely true in these situations. And I think there was a famous commentator once said that you can't win a race in turn 1, but you can most certainly lose one. And that is absolutely true for all 12 of these drivers. Heroics at the start of it's classed an endurance race, although it's only an hour, so it's kind of like a short endurance race. But it's still it's a race of multiple halves. And going gung-ho into T1, if you have an incident and you're facing the wrong direction on the first lap, that is incredibly difficult to recover, especially when, and it's worth repeating this for everybody at home, top 5 gets you in to tomorrow. 6th position, thanks very much for your time. Thanks for coming to France, catching an early flight home. So, big reward for getting this right.
Yeah, that's it. There's no sort of consolation prize for 6th or 7th or
exactly.
Like that. You're either in or you're not. I always compare some of the most savage racing in the world to karting. In karting, you win or you're second. Like, you either win the race and that's it, or you're one of the others. And you get 30 drivers in a karting race a lot of the time. Big fields, and this is that sort of moment where you've got that savage cut-off. It's either you're in or you're not. And I love the prospect of that because it means that there's such pressure on the drivers and everybody involved. And again, the pressure we mentioned, they're representing their nation here. This isn't just, they've put their home nation's flag on a car. They are actually representing the nation itself. It's just phenomenal, and it's great to have them all together here in the room with us as well. And
I think it's worth elaborating on that point for anybody who wasn't here at the broadcast for the last race a little while ago. They're representing the nation in esports, but esports here at the FIA Motorsport Games is one of 16 disciplines. So whatever rewards they get for this esport will go towards their country's tally of medals. So it's not just the esports aspect you're concentrating on, it's the whole Olympic Games of motor racing that we're doing here today. So there's big pressure on these drivers' shoulders because whatever they do will directly influence whether they take home the overall trophy for their country.
Yeah, that's it. And it's great, again, to see that the real racing that's going on outside this weekend, that we can literally see out the windows of this room, is going hand in hand with the esports aspect, and it's just great to see that. It's fantastic to see it appreciated in such a beautiful way.
Yeah, it really is. It's a beautiful opportunity for each and every single one of the men and women that are taking part in the Fanatec Esports Cup here at the FIA Motorsport Games. But we'll look at that one a little bit later on, because now it's the business of going virtual motor racing for the final time today, the last of the last chance qualification races here at the Circuit Paul Ricard. The Fanatec Esports Cup at the 2022 FIA Motorsport Games is about to get under green flag conditions, and he's been Kriblov in the Israeli number 49 Audi is the man fastest off of the line. The middle of the racetrack goes to the racing line to cement that race lead. Can Jug get the BMW down the inside? No, he can't. There's contact further down. Latvia in trouble, and another one of the Audis also in strife on the outside of the circuit. It's happened, Chaz, straight away.
It has indeed, and well, Gubarev's put the car on the inside of the circuit, and he was down the inside into turn 1, but I think the Audi on the outside did not know that they were 3 wide. I believe that was Jok Olsen in the Icelandic machine, and unfortunately he was the one that bore the brunt of that impact. There was a little tap between Gubarevs and Park as they went in there. The Honda squashed in the middle of them. Wasn't really anywhere that he could go, to be honest with you, and that first corner incident has knocked Jok Olsen all the way down. Interestingly, Luca Losio hasn't gained anything yet off the start. We probably expected him to try a few moves into the first couple of corners, but here comes the move now from Arojo Pisco with Jug in front of him, and he's all over the back of the Slovenian BMW.
Yeah, Pisco to the outside. Now we've seen this one's been a very good opportunity for many drivers over the course of today, but can he do anything about it on this early lap? The tyres are cold, the brakes are cold, the cars are at their absolute heaviest. Pisco to the outside, the BMW holding firm on the inside line. He doesn't quite get it done. There's a slow Ferrari as well getting involved. Wow, that is massively good car control from the Andorra machine, and the Porsche running the wide way round the racetrack, but just about holds onto it, and that allows the Lamborghini to sneak on through with Luca Losio, who you said wasn't moving forward, but hello, he's now 8th.
Yeah, I think it was the McLaren, if it was either Gioca or Giacoli. I was just having a quick look. It was the Albanian McLaren of Gioca. He was completely sideways on the way in after that big hit. I think maybe there's damage to the car. He rejoined the circuit just ahead of this man here, Visar Giacoli. The Kosovo driver is down the inside. Once again goes the Porsche, the UAE machine trying to barge its way through. They've got the Icelandic Audi just behind them as well. It's all checking up, and I mean, these guys are having a battle, losing out, and then suddenly coming under attack from another car behind. It looks like Gjokka's got that McLaren under control now, the Albanian machine, but yeah, he received a big old whack there, and I think the car might have been damaged. There's even more contact as well, Paul. A bit scrappy this opening first lap or so.
Yeah, so I think the word we used in race 1 was circumspect in the opening laps, and then it's quite caution to the wind in this little activity as we're seeing Nagikole for Kosovo overtaking, losing the position. The 28 very deep into the corner, catches the back of the Porsche as well. So Jökulsson having a nightmare opening couple of laps, and that is contact with one of his rivals. That's Abdul Rahman that drops down to the back of the field. Meanwhile, further up front, Luca Lozio making short work of the field from 12th on the grid up to 6th, and now very firmly on the charge, and Pashtikov is the next man in his sights. 2 Lamborghinis heading down the long Mistral straight, trying to break the slipstream as well. That's a little bit naughty from the Ukrainian machine, but he just about gets away with it. Luca Lozio not releasing the loud pedal, has the inside. Inner has the ideal racing line. Ukraine loses the car as well. That's good avoidance. Very good avoidance by Pishkov behind, and you can open your eyes now, Chaz, because that was quite intense.
It was indeed, yeah. Pashtikov just throwing the car in a little bit too hard there in the dirty air behind Lozio, and he just tried to make what he could of the corner, and well, Giaccoli making a bit too much of the corner there as he fights with Abdul Rahman, I believe it is. No, sorry, it's Sal Rashdan that's next to him. A little bit of a kiss on the way into the corner, manages to get away with it there, does the Kuwaiti driver, but yeah, certainly a lot of argy-bargy going on here. I noticed the slogan down the side of the Ukrainian car, fueled by bravery. I love that, absolutely love that on the side of the Lamborghini on Pashtikov's machine.
Yeah, superb stuff, but maybe a little bit too brave on that occasion, and that has cost him over the course of the race. So let's have a quick look now. Things have calmed down. Number 49 is still our leader, and Park collecting cones as well as collecting positions. He's currently second, so that answers the first question. How's the Honda going to run? First couple of laps are anything to go by. Very nicely indeed.
Yeah, indeed. Well, that's the thing. He had a bit of contact at the start with the man that's right behind him now, Gubarevs. Here's a look at what happened then. So that's, I believe, is that Abdul Rahman coming back on, and we've got the Kosovo McLaren in front. This is Jökulsson going down the inside. He's cleared the McLaren, but he's just a bit too late on the brakes. Goes down the inside of the Porsche, clips him, and then at the end of the day, he's going to get a penalty for it. He knows that probably for causing a collision. So he's just got to carry on. At the end of the day, you've just got to get on with your race at that point and take whatever comes your way.
And again, there's nothing malicious there, is there?
No,
it's just literally a racing incident. You're trying to make the move. You've not accounted for the car slowing down in front of you, and you can't stop the car quite quick enough, as now Gubarevs fancies his chances against the Honda. So let's have a look how much the Porsche has got the advantage. That's a significant amount of overlap there, but not quite the racing room for Gubarevs. So he drops back in behind Park, second and third position. Fancies his chances again round the outside, but again, nothing quite doing. Can he turn the car tight enough? Yes, he can, but the Honda closes the door as well, and that's as close, ladies and gents, as you're going to get without touching between those two, and Park just about holds on to the position for now.
I think there was a little bit of contact, you know. There was another little tap there as well as Gubarevs just turns into the right rear of the Honda while it parks on the apex. We've got Jug and then Lozio behind these guys as well. Lozio could end up getting up into second place if this battle falls his way. And we are only 6 minutes into this race. It's pretty remarkable, but it's a great battle once again while the race leader disappears off up the road. Let's not forget as well, that number 49, Israeli Audi that is leading the race, was within the inside of the top 10 in its qualifying quarter-final, and then spun out with just a couple of laps to go and dropped outside the top 10, so they're definitely making the most of this last chance. Here's a look at the start.
Yes, let's have another look at the start. You can see the second row of the grid there. We've got 3 wide coming into T1. Parks the man in the middle, drops back a little bit initially, then doesn't recognise the Porsche alongside Iceland, unfortunately, is the car that pays the price on the outside of the corner. And then again, we missed this during the live, but that's the BMW running out onto the rumble strips as well, so a little bit too aggressive on the curves, while the car's the pressures haven't quite set in the tyres at that stage, and that's cost Jug massively from what would have been a lead to now in the thick of the fight that we see right now.
He's done the fastest lap of the race, though, as a bit of a consolation. I'm not sure if, speaking directly to the director here, we could have a look at that again from on board with Luca Lozio's car, because he just missed that Icelandic Audi on the outside of the corner. And again, that could have been his race almost determined by turn 1, like it was in his qualifying quarter-final. This is looking back from Pashtikov's Lamborghini as the Porsche of Pisco just, pushes us along more like Pushnikov right now as he goes down the straight towards the long right-hander. You'll see that Pisco will back out of it. He doesn't want to get that close to him under brakes. You've got to think about dirty air as well, which is not something we've mentioned too much in these GT3 cars. They heavily rely on aerodynamics, hence the different shapes of them, the huge wings and splitters and canards and all sorts. And well, there's no aero gun on there as Pushnikov slides very sideways, but nicely held.
Yeah, really nice bit of driving there. A little bit of a sigh that you saw from Pashnikov, a little bit of a twitch of the face as well as he's just keeping the car on the straight and narrow. But interestingly, coming down the Mistral straight, the Porsche, not once but twice, gave a little tap to the back of the Lamborghini. A bit of bump drafting going on there, which is risky.
Yeah.
At those kind of speeds. Yes, he backed off before the corner came in, but is that a bit of an unnecessary risk? As we see, actually, sorry, Chaz, before we throw back to you, Jokkelsen drive-through penalty in the number 28 Audi. So 8th position, drive-through penalty. Serves it straight away, but that's going to be an expensive penalisation.
It is, especially because it's happened so early in the race when the field was a little bit more concertina together as well. Look down the inside there from Pisco in the Andorran Porsche. Tries it. At the end of the day, you can't say he's not backwards and coming forwards. He's certainly giving this a go on the back of the Ukrainian Lamborghini. He certainly knows where the strengths and weaknesses are of that car, and he's taking every opportunity he can to have a look down the inside. Closes in once again, but this is all about displaying a bit of patience now and just waiting for the right opportunity to come through. We're going to have a picture-in-picture here. As you can see, the driver's arms all working away on the right-hand side of your shot. Now the Porsche tucks back into the slipstream, and as you mentioned before, the bump drafting, I'd say it's a little bit unnecessary in GT3 cars especially. You can even just bend the aero slightly on these cars with a bit of a tap, but at the end of the day, with how sort of wedge-shaped a lot of the front ends of these cars are, you can lift up the rear wheels. It's back to the front of the pack. That's Locio going up into 3rd position there. He's round the outside of Gubarevs, who is now past Park, so the three of them have all changed places.
Fantastic stuff, and let's remember, folks, Luca Lozio started this race in 12th position less than 10 minutes ago. 10 places in less than 10 minutes. That is a fantastic start to the race. The big question now, with about 2 seconds and change to spare between Lozio and our race leader Gribov, can we do anything about this? Is it going to be looking for a race victory? Remember, Lozio, 9th. He was running until the very final lap. In fact, halfway around the final lap when he ran out of fuel. We know that car's quick. We know this driver's quick. Can he put everything together for this one? This is going to be one to really keep an eye on, Chaz.
Depends if he's put enough fuel in it, I guess. We'll have to see. I imagine he's not. He's certainly learned his lesson. But 2nd place and the fastest lap of the race now for Luca Lozio. That is exactly what he needs. Beautiful stuff. Gubarev's now 3rd. Then we've got Park in 4th. Jog is 5th and only about 0.6 of a second back from this battle. Then you've got Pisco and Pashnikov having their fantastic fight for 6th and 7th. But importantly, they are out of those top 5 qualifying positions. There you see Yunho Park on the bottom right of his shot, really focusing on the back of that Porsche in front of him, just waiting for an opportunity to come through. But behind him now, filling the mirrors from a distance even, it would be, we have Jug in the number 53 Slovenian BMW. And again, 3 very different cars here.
Yeah.
We've got rear-engined, mid-engined, front-engined, different manufacturers, and it's just one of the beauties of GT3 racing that 3 cars so different from one another can be so close in terms of performance.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and that is why GT3 racing is sensational. The balance of performance as well in Assetto Corsa Competizione doing its job at Yunho Park now in the Honda. Another one that wants to do a little bit of bump drafting. You heard then, the car was kind of on the rev limiter as well, but he gets a really nice cutback to try and find the inside. Doesn't have enough room. He likes to go to the outside this time, does Yunho Park in the white number 50 machine. Not enough room there. Looks to the inside again. Can't quite get the car turned as tightly as he needs to do, and then runs into the rear of the Porsche. Yunho Park makes contact with Gubarevs, and sadly the Latvian driver off on the side of the racetrack. It says 5th on the timing screen, but we'll give it a moment for everything to kind of sort itself out on the live timing to see exactly where he rejoins the racetrack. But that was very hard racing very early in a race, Chaz, and maybe a little bit too hard, I think, at this stage. And sadly, Latvia are the team that miss out the most.
I say it's hard to judge that one especially from Park's point of view, because when you do have the run on the car in front of you, he's basically just run into the back of him on the exit of the corner. He knows he's got on the power a bit earlier. He knows that he's got the run on him. You can see he drives into that rear corner and just leans on it. And to be honest, it's fantastic avoidance from the car behind as well. It has to be said. But to be honest with you, I didn't see the need to push it that hard on the exit, but at the same time, he could have felt he was getting pressure from Jug behind, and he felt that if he was the one to lift off, he'd have been turned by the BMW, and it's those split-second decisions you just have to make sometimes. You have to be a bit savage in it, and speaking of savage, this pace from Luca Lossio is absolutely savage in itself, because right now he's all over the back of Gribov, less than 13 minutes into the race, Paul, and he's been from the back of the grid, and now he's less than half a second, less than half a car length, you could say, behind the race leader.
Yeah, spoke to Luca at the start of the day, and he's sort of like picking the Lamborghini. Is an interesting choice. He thinks he can make it work, and as we said before, it's a certain kind of car that requires a certain kind of driver, but Luca Lossio is making it sing at this moment in time. Dummies to the outside, goes back to the inside into the fast right-hander. Is this the optimal line that he needs? He's got the overlap, and there we go. Gribov decides he doesn't want to fight that one. Better to live to fight another day, and Gribov drops back in a second position. So Luca Lossio, there we go. It's taken him 13 minutes, but he's done the job. 11 cars passed, and new race leader.
That's a good going rate, that, to be honest with you. That is a good
I'd take
going
that
rate.
one, I think. Yeah,
I would
would
be
take
happy
that.
to pass one car in an hour, to be honest with you. But yeah, I mean, he's done the fastest lap. Gribov didn't fight it too hard. He just knows what's good for him right now.
Exactly.
And at the end of the day, he's had his opportunity before to get into the semi-finals tomorrow, and he had that spin later on in the race. He knows how fickle this competition can be when it comes to just losing out in the blink of an eye. All it takes is to dip one wheel onto the curb a bit more than you might normally, hit a rumble strip or just one of those what we call sleeping policemen, one of the sausage curbs, and it'll fling the car around, especially in something as sensitive as the Audi R8. And he's now probably just going to try and sit behind Lossio for the rest of the race, and there's nothing wrong with doing that. He's more than welcome to do that because he'll get through to the semi.
But you're absolutely right, and that again, intelligent racing.
Yeah.
No point. He knows that Luca Lossio where he started. He knows that suddenly he's in second position and catching hand over fist. Don't fight a fight you don't need to fight. You've got 3 seconds and change to the chasing pair behind. That's a nice comfort blanket. Let the race come to you. See where you stand further into the run. See how the car feels towards the second half of the event. But Clement Jug's not interested in doing any thinking and feeling and waiting. He fancies his chances to get his way past Park as well and see if he can buy into that fight for first and second position. Gribov lost 1.1 seconds immediately to Lossio, so he's the man with the pace at this moment in time. And the question is, who's going to join him on the podium when the checkered flag waves in 45.5 minutes time?
Yeah, it could be anybody. I mean, from the races we've seen, it literally could be anybody in this race. We look now at Andrei Gioca in the Albania McLaren. We go back to Jug, though. He's alongside Park right now, trying to get around the outside, and the BMW carries a lot of mid-corner speed, but he's going to run wide. He's going to get back on before the markers, nice and safe. He's going to try and cut across the front of Park, though. He needs to be careful doing that because he's put the Honda onto the curbs, and you're going to lose grip out there. He could straight line it. Doesn't, though. Great car control. The two of them very close to making contact here on a number of occasions. But it's like you said before in the earlier race when we were talking about Teichmann. Oh no, there is a tap and both of them lose out, but then they still remain side by side on the exit of the corner. But Park gets back in front. Don't think Jug's going to receive any sort of issues or penalties for cutting the corner like that, because at the end of the day he did it as part of an incident, so he's going to get away with that. I was going to mention that you asked me earlier on in the first of these last chance races about Teichmann. Do you bother? Like, do you bother pushing? Do you try and have that battle? Do you try and get ahead of the car in front for that one grid position? But with these guys, you can't let anything slip. If they've got the opportunity, you have to take it, don't you?
And especially at this early stage of the race as well, because you don't know what's going to come further down the line. You don't know where you're going to come out through the pit shake-up. You don't know if there's any kind of problem. So really, you've got to, as you say, you've got to go out there and find any advantage. You find any lap time that you can.
Yeah.
There's also, and it's something we've not really spoken about, but it's something that we spoke to our race winner from race one in between the two broadcasts. He was on 3 track limit warnings that's dictated by the software. Track limit warning number 4, you've got yourself a penalty.
Yeah.
So you want to build as much advantage as you can so you can drive within yourself if you need to be, to look after the car, to look after your status in the race as well. And certainly with just over 15 minutes gone, this is very much a standalone sprint period of the race, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. I mentioned before about the whole book with pages, and each lap is a page. You know, you have to save some of the good writing for later on when you've got the sort of need for it in the last moments of the race, you know, when time is starting to run out. But you have to manage each phase of the race as well. As we look once again here at Jug chasing down Park, this is going to be the contact and the incident we had before. But you'd noticed something for a sec there, Paul.
Yeah, he just flashed up for Park, a drive-through penalty. So I'm not sure, not got confirmation of what that's for. Could it be for this replay that came on almost straight after? So Park's the white Honda to the inside, continues to run side by side. Judd kind of pushes him over onto the curbs, which unsettles the number 50. But again, just about holds on, keeps the car to the inside. The Slovenian machine, the BMW now, is the one that takes a turn over on the curbs, has the inside to the fast, then runs deep and makes contact. And sadly for the 53, he's the one that's kind of penalised for that one, despite running into the side of the Honda. But there we go. Look. Yeah. Park, drive-through penalty. So not sure at this juncture what that's for. And he serves it straight away, as we see in Gioca, the number 47 car, running off the racetrack and recovering for Albania. So Gioca, 8th position at this moment in time, becoming a little bit detached from those ahead of him. Oh. So there we go. We did say anything can happen in these races, and for Park, it's already happened.
It has indeed, yeah. It's very strange. You can see him just making his way through the pit lane now. He's going to actually come back out. There he is in the background of shot, and I think he's going to lose out as well to the Ferrari of Al Rashdan and drop down to 10th position behind the number 34 machine. And again, that's another disadvantage of having an issue like this so early on in the race when the field is closer together. If everybody had 10-15 seconds between them, like we sometimes see in an hour-long race, you know, he wouldn't have as much of an issue. We've got a drive-through penalty for Gioca as well now in the number 47 McLaren. Now that might be related to why we just saw him slow coming off the corner a moment ago. Maybe he's got himself into a bit of trouble.
Yeah, so penalties coming in thick and fast. So these things, we've said it so many times in so many broadcasts, real or virtual, are not over until they are over. And let's have a look at a replay now. So that's the number 47, unsettled on the curb and then into the side of the car ahead as well. So it's so easy, isn't it? I mean, you touched on this one about the loss of downforce following another car and how easy they are to unsettle, especially over the curbs here at Paul Ricard. If you try and ask something of the car while it's doing that bucking and boring over the curb, very quickly that ends up in facing the wrong direction. And it's so easy because you need to use curbs at a lot of this track in order to be competitive.
Yeah, you do. You have to use the track limits and really get out there. I'm not one to argue with the FIA, to be honest, but I'm intrigued by the fact that Gioca's got a drive-through, because I think with the time he's lost, I mean, this is just my opinion, obviously, but from the time he's already lost with that incident and he's fallen so far back from the cars in front, I don't know if it would necessitate a drive-through or not, but I suppose at the end of the day, if he's caused contact, they still have to enforce it.
Also, it could well be a case of the track limits that we spoke about. Have 3, 4's a slam dunk.
Yeah, that's true.
That's managed by the software, and sometimes because when you're running something through a software, it's not the same as having human eyes on it.
Very true.
When you go off track because of an instant, it's still an off-track.
Yes.
So it's very difficult to find that balance between off-track gaining advantage and off-track because you're avoiding everything breaking loose in front of you. So, I mean, this is speculation at this time. Dangerous game to play as a commentator to speculate.
Oh,
so
it is.
Hopefully we'll be whispered into our ear as to the reason behind Gioca and also Park's drive-through penalty over the course of the race. But let's get back to what we do know. And what we do know is Luca Lozio. 10 laps in the book. 4.2 second advantage in the number 3 Lamborghini for Italy, ahead of Gribov in second place in the number 49. We're riding on board now with the Kosovan machine, the number 33. A little bit too far away, I think, at this moment in time for Pastuka to find an opportunity to overtake. But this really is, it doesn't feel on paper as though this is the corner of choice to pass. But we've seen so many moves up to senior this weekend, haven't we?
Yeah, we really have. You know, it's obviously great to use the slipstream to your advantage because it's the easiest way to gain time on the car in front is tuck up behind it and just be quicker than it in a straight line. You know, anyone can drive in a straight line, but it's just having the confidence to put the car in the right place when you get there at the end. And again, coming back to what we mentioned earlier about having a long time to think about it, as once more Pashtukov goes deep into the right-hander after the end of the straight and has to really check up, and somehow Giacoli does not go into the back of him. But now the pressure is going to be on, and that's the thing. Pashtukov has suddenly realised with that close call that he's right behind him once more. If he wasn't already focused on the fact that he's filling the mirrors, then now is the time to really, really spot that blue McLaren. That
was a nice bit of driving from Giacoli, actually, to stay out of the way of the rear of the Lamborghini. But not only stay out of the way, but not really lose a great deal of time as well. It's easy. Well, not easy, that's the wrong word, but it's very easy to lose a heck of a lot of time when you're avoiding an incident, but he kind of just judged that one to Gicole very nicely indeed, and that keeps him in the pound seats now to have an opportunity to find a way past Pashtikov as they pass the car that's serving their drive-through penalty. So this has suddenly become a fight for sixth position, and sixth is just one simple place away from the qualification. So get into that sixth position. You could possibly have an opportunity as Gicole again shows the nose to the inside. It's more a case of trying to hound the car ahead off of the racing line than an actual genuine overtaking attempt. But that's what you got to do. Make them work for it.
Yeah, that's it. He's putting his nose down the inside. Try and force the issue. Just try and make an error. I said it earlier in the closing laps of the race. You know, you don't have to necessarily put yourself in a place of risk and throw the car down the inside. As long as you put your nose down the inside, just show a nose a little bit and just give them a bit of an idea of your intentions and just say, look, I want to put the car here, but I'm going to just sort of see how you react to it. If you initiate that thought process in their head and get into their head, that's it. You can start playing the mind games from there. You know, that's your key that unlocks the door. And right now, you can see Gicole moving around from the right to the left. He's showing him, look, I don't want your slipstream all the way down here. You know, I don't need it. It's, again, all mind games as he just tickles the back of the Lamborghini, to be honest with you. He's just sort of dancing around behind it. But again, Pashtikov has gone deep into here a few times, and Gicole's going to learn that over the next few laps, I reckon, if he sees it again. And
Gicole will be heartened, I think, by the fact that Pashtikov is starting to defend fresh air. And when you're the chaser, that is exactly what you want to see. You want to see the car ahead, defending where it's not necessary. We're seeing two cars getting very close together. Again, Iceland that's been in more than its fair share of drama, and Albania, the number 34, running very deep on the overtaking move. Not the first time that we've seen that over the course of the day. And again, let's go back to this fight between 6th and 7th position. So Gicole, just, as you say, get into the head of Pashtikov, make him start thinking, make Pashtikov start thinking more about what's happening behind him than what he needs to be doing in front of him. And then, very quickly, opportunities start to present themselves.
Yeah, you have to halt the mental progress in the driver that you're chasing. You know, you have to take away the idea of them going forwards. You have to just sort of tell them that, no, you're not going forward. I'm going to keep you here, and I'm going to pester you, and I'm going to just make sure that I can make a move on you and get a position out of it, because by the time that we're done, we'll have you buried. It was the number 34 Q8 Ferrari that was involved with the Icelandic Audi, and to be honest, I thought there was going to be further contact on the exit because he got it stopped for the chicane, fair play to him, but then I thought there might have been a bit of a check-up and a crossover on the exit. We're nearly half an hour into this race, Paul, and I don't honestly know where that goes, but more importantly, we're nearly into the pit window.
Yeah, and again, for the benefit of anyone that's joining the broadcast fresh, having not seen the first of the last chance races, shall we say, that was on a little bit earlier on, we've seen a divergence in pit strategies from many of these drivers over the course of today. So the simple rule of the fact is the pit window is open for 10 minutes. It's mandatory to come down pit lane, and it's mandatory at a minimum to put 1 litre of fuel in the car. You may change tyres if you wish, but time-wise, there's absolutely no real benefit to do that. And you can come in at any point during that pit window. Now, what we've seen, Charles, before, we saw it again actually in the last race, coming in at the start of that pit window seems to give a little bit of benefit. Drivers that do that tend to have an opportunity to jump those ahead of them. Now, is that a lesson that these drivers are going to have learned? Or different cars, different track conditions, different drivers, running long might be the advantage, and that's really fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is, because as we've said, they only need to put a tiny amount of fuel in the car. The main difference is on pit entry. You know, those that have practiced it, those that have gotten used to how it works and where they can maybe gain a bit of time or brake later or even just smooth it out, because we've seen a lot of people come out of that final corner and feel the need to put all of the lock in the world on to get the car over to the right-hand side of the circuit and fling it the other side of that white line because they're being so meticulous about covering that white line when they come in. So there are a lot of elements to the pit stops, despite the fact that it is literally, it's almost like a stop and go, like a stop and go penalty with a litre of fuel splashed in, to be honest. That's all they need to do as per the regulations, is put 1 litre of fuel in it. But right now, I think Gicole's going to try and put about a litre's worth of this McLaren into the back of this Lamborghini. He's all over the back of that thing.
And the car, both cars in fact, are moving about much more than you would expect at this stage in the race as well, aren't they? Both drivers working the car really hard, but conversely that's going to have an impact on how these cars behave towards the end of the stint, and we've seen that already today in the race in the earlier broadcast and in the quarterfinal races themselves that weren't on air. cars massively change over the course of the stint, and if you're good now, it's absolutely no guarantee that you're going to have the car underneath you come the last 5-10 minutes. And we've seen races turn absolutely on the head as we're seeing Gicoli now very, very fast through the first part of the corner. Pashtikov a little bit more steady away, shall we say, in the Lamborghini, and that was almost a huge accident. But both drivers, as you can see at the top of the screen now, the pit window has opened. So Gicoli, come down pit lane this lap, get himself out of this battle and see if he can undercut. What's your shout?
I'd do the same, to be honest with you, because he's clearly quicker than Pashtikov, but he's not making the progress in terms of trying it and getting moves done. He's just sort of there at the moment, 1 or 2 car lengths back. So I think he needs to just make sure he gets himself out in a bit of clear air, away from that Lamborghini, and crack on. And yes, there you go. Now he's on to the right-hand side, but he doesn't do it as sort of aggressively as others have done. So I'm not sure what the exact limit would be in terms of coming in like that when it comes to crossing the white line. But still, he is the first car in, so even the top 7 ahead of him all making their way through. Sorry, top 6.
So to go back to the point of different pit strategies and do they, don't they work to your advantage, I implore everybody at home now to keep an eye on Gicoli as this unfolds. He came down pit road in 7th position. As Chaz has said, nobody in front or behind have decided to make their stop yet. So when all the little bars on the top of your screen on the left-hand side turn green, when everybody served their stop, will Gicoli come out behind Pashtikov or in front, or even will he jump further up or down the running order? We'll find out. He looked a little bit cautious, I think it's fair to be said. Coming down onto the speed limit, onto the pit line. So whether that's going to cost him or not, actually the P has been next to his name for a little bit longer than I would have expected to, although there we go. It goes green and it comes out of pit lane. Perfect timing, there we go. So let's see how this one unfolds. There's 6 minutes, 24 seconds left of this pit window. And also, again, to kind of the polar opposite of what we're saying, they've got to be careful, these drivers, not to leave it too late.
Yes, well, we've had a few drivers leave it too late so far, and it's a long lap here at Paul Ricard. I mean, it's nearly 2 minutes in a GT car with some of the fastest drivers, and to be honest with you, they only need one bad sector to really muck up an entire lap, because it's so hard to put a lap together around here that any one of these very tricky corners could undo it all. So this is a very important outlap now by Gicoli. He's all the way down at the bottom of the field, though. It seems like a long stop, you know.
Well, I've just been whispered in my ear, I think I heard it right, that there's potentially Gicoli's taken tyres on this stop. Now, whether that's by choice or mistake, not setting it in his pit stint, I'm not sure. Now, that is something we've seen nothing of this season. So we've seen cars running out of grip towards the end of the stint. You're not going to be tens of seconds faster than everybody else. It's not like it's raining and you've gone in and put slicks on when everybody else is on inters and you're so much quicker. But it might start paying. And you know what, Chaz? The more I think about it, the more that's a clever move. Because at that time, they were 6th and 7th, detached from 5th, where he needs to be. So he's kind of, although he's taken himself out of an opportunity of one of the cars in head getting into trouble, he's put the destiny back in his own hands again. Roll the dice. You said it in the last broadcast. You miss 100% of the shots that you don't take.
Exactly.
So that's interesting, actually. We should keep our eye on that one, because that's going to be a slow burner. But let's come back to that in 28 minutes and 41 seconds. And let's see if that's paid off.
Let's. But to be honest with you, I mean, it comes back against the fact it's a long lap round here. So there's a lot more opportunity per lap for you to gain time on somebody. So the numbers may look even more impressive when you have fresh rubber on the car in comparison to those around you. If you've got tyres that have done an hour against somebody that's done half an hour on them, there's that sort of curve in about the last sort of 15 to 20 minutes of that hour where that's where it really starts to go. And to be honest, I think if he can get over the initial phase of coming back out on fresh tyres can be a scary prospect, because suddenly you've got loads of grip that you weren't compensating for before. If he can get over that, he's going to be, I reckon he might have a good chance of doing something special there.
But it's like we say, if I say to you, find me a second a lap, that's a very daunting and difficult prospect. But if I say, find me a 10th of a second per corner, that's imminently doable. And that's exactly what he needs to do. Find a 10th or 2 per corner, and suddenly you've got a second a lap that you were looking for. So very, very interesting for Gicoli. So we'll come back to that one in a moment.
Well, I've noticed something.
I know what you're going to say.
For some reason, it's not fulfilled the stop.
Let's hope that he's not put boots on and no fuel, because that's the rule. 1 litre of fuel. So if you put boots on, but you don't put that 1 litre in, technically speaking, that's not fulfilling the mandatory stock requirements. So that's a question that will hang over us for a little while longer. By the way, in 4th position, that is Gribov, that is the first of the runners that have made their stop. He was 2nd at the time, I think, when he came down pit road. Pisco in 5th position, comes back out as well. So Luca Lazio looking like he's going to leave it to the checkered flag, but we've got a good fight for 8th here.
We do indeed, yes. We've got Abdelrahman right in front of Gioca right now in the Albanian McLaren. I love the look of that thing as well. It's a fantastic looking car anyway, is the McLaren, but with the Albanian flag on it as well, it looks even better. He gets a nice tidier entry into turn 1. He's going to get a good run off the second part of the chicane now, and a good run on the back of the number 44 pusher. And he's hit the brakes and let him go. Maybe just thinking, I don't want anything to do with this fight. You just do what you're doing. There's still applause in the background. At the end of the day, he's made the move. But that could be interesting to see, because some of these drivers we have seen, they've been picking their fights, haven't they?
Yeah, and that's clever from Abdelrahman. I think he recognises the fact that he's just not as quick as that car at this stage. We've seen our race leader, Luca Lazio, now with 2 minutes, 15 seconds left on the pit window, comes down pit lane to take his mandatory stop. Nice and smooth. He's got that comfort blanket of time, hasn't he, where he doesn't have to be overly aggressive on the pit entry, doesn't have to be overly aggressive getting off the limiter on pit exit as well. He can just, that's what going quickly at the first start of the stint, you use your tyres up more, but it buys you a safety net.
Yeah.
And there's a lot to be said for that.
Yeah, that's one of my favourite things about motorsport, is you don't get one thing without the other. So you can't have a car that's fast in a straight line but great round corners. You can't build up a lead without killing the tyres a little bit. And, you can't build up that buffer without sort of using the rubber up. You can't look after the rubber without losing a bit of time. There's always compromise in motorsport, and that's what makes it so interesting as a commentator and as a spectator, even as a sim racer, because you get to try out all these scenarios and do it for yourself without having to spend hundreds of thousands of pounds a year on a GT3 car. Here's contact further down as the Latvian Porsche loses it into the side of the 34 car of Al Rashdan, and unfortunately unnecessary contact between the two there, but he was lapping him as well. He's just had that moment and lost the back end. That was Gubarev's in the number 7 machine, wasn't it?
And I think Gubarev's was sort of semi out of control by the time that contact was made, wasn't he? So it's not really an opportunistic or an inappropriate move. It was more a case of, I'm trying to gather the car up and oops, somebody else is in the way as well. So yeah, exactly. So unfortunate there, but they both do live to fight another day. Uno Park currently 6th on the track, but he's passed a couple of cars in pit lane. I think that'll update itself on the timing screen in a moment. So let's see if Park can get himself back into the conversation for, remember, top 5 is what matters for these drivers. Top 5 is what will give you access to the semi-finals and potentially even the final tomorrow. And that can't be overstated enough, can it?
No.
They will be drivers. There'll be 7 drivers in fight that we have to say goodbye to today.
Yeah, and it's a real shame, but again, that's what the pressure is all about. You know, it could be their last race of the weekend. It could be the last time they're sat in one of these rigs this weekend. And it'll be a massive shame to lose them from the competition, because we've got a fantastic range of people here. And right now, well, still that penalty, the pit stop fulfillment from Giaccoli has not gone away. But as you just rightly pointed to, Paul, the lead gap is not massive, to be honest with you. Gribov was dropping away a bit from Lossio when he went past him, and it got up to 6 seconds at one point. But now, 2.3. Yeah, Lucas maybe he has taken it a bit easy on the way in. You never know, but he's still. I mean, 2.3 seconds isn't a bad gap to have. At the end of the day, Park is very sideways through there. But yeah, Lossio not quite as far ahead as we thought. Yeah, we'll keep our eye on that one. As you say, maybe that is what we said earlier, that he's just taking it a little bit safer in pit exit and pit entry and pit exit, and also bringing the car back up to temperature and pressure again when he gets on the racetrack. So we'll keep our eye on that one as the next portion of this race unfolds. But it kind of has another effect, doesn't it? So Gribov behind can now see Luca Lossio. Okay, he's maybe a little bit of a speck in the distance, but he can see him, and that empowers you as a driver to then give you more confidence, and confidence is massive in this sport. Yeah. So Lossio's starting to extend it now, 3.1 seconds to the good, but that's a little bit more pressure, I think, than Luca Lossio would have wanted to have been in at this stage in proceedings. Yeah, definitely. I mean, the way he was starting to move away earlier on, it looked like it was going to be an easy drive for him. He had the pace and he's got the confidence. He is starting to open that gap up a little bit now. It's 3.1 seconds again. We look here at Clement Jug in the 3rd position at the moment in the Slovenian BMW M4. Again, another race where we've not got the McLarens in the field at the very front of it. So it was interesting earlier in the day that McLaren's won all 3 of the quarterfinals, but then since then, the drivers that didn't make it through haven't been able to sort of get the same out of the McLaren. It's interesting to see that, actually.
It kind of looked a slam dunk, didn't it, for McLaren? But
yeah, it did.
It's one of, let's just forget for a moment the fact that according to the screen, the pit stop requirement hasn't been fulfilled for Gikli in 8th position. He is 1 place different to where he came in for pit lane, but only 1.6 seconds behind Pashnikov. So if that's just a kink that needs to be ironed out and he's indeed compliant, that's actually worked out quite nice, because his boots are going to start becoming all the better than everybody else's around him. So now he's going to start getting that benefit he was looking for. So that might have been a dice roll that was worth it. But actually, yes, he's still behind Pashnikov, but Park has also snuck into the equation 13 seconds up the road as well. So it's not net, probably not going to work out for him. But it was, I like a dice roll.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you have to take the risks in motorsport. That's the thing. If everybody's on the same strategy, it wouldn't be anywhere near as interesting.
Exactly.
You know? If everyone was doing the exact same thing, there wouldn't be a point in having the pit stops at the end of the day, you know, and some of them are trying it and pushing the limits when it comes into pit entry, others are taking it easy, and then, I mean, whether Gikli meant it or not, obviously to take tyres, you know, it could have been a dice roll, but unfortunately, with the lack of that pit stop being fulfilled, it doesn't seem like that's going to pay off. We're looking at the man here, Octavio Araujo Pisco, in the number 23 Porsche, currently in 5th position, and he's got a healthy gap behind him to Park, so he's got a good amount of time to just, I don't want to say leave it on the table, but he doesn't have to push and hot lap every time. He doesn't need to progress ahead of Gubarev's. He can just sit in 5th position, get the car home safely, and that'll be that, and he'll be in the semi-finals tomorrow.
And remember that Andorran car's been in the wars a little bit over the first half of this race. So I'm sure it's not running quite as sweetly as it would have been at the start of the race. You can see the damage when we see it on screen as well on pretty much every panel. So Pisco's going to be, as you say, just bring the car home to the checkered flag now. Hope that there's not too many dramas. Hope that the car survives nicely. And there's Pashnikov that we see on our screen now. And there you go. These two cars have been together as one pretty much for the entire race. But Gikli very much in the ascendancy now with those fresh tyres on him. And that McLaren, can he get the job done this time, what he failed to do before the pit window opens, as he's shadowing the car ahead all the way through one of the fastest corners on the circuit.
Yeah, one thing he needs to be careful of, though, is now that he's got more grip than him, well, theoretically anyway, he needs to make sure that he's still compensating for when the Lamborghini will be braking, when he's going to be turning in. You know, you can't get too close to the back of a car like that when you know you've got decent rubber underneath you and you've got a bit more capability, you know, because it affects the braking as well. You know, the car is grippier in every single aspect of the way it makes it round the circuit. So he needs to just ease it off a little bit now he's caught up to Pashnikov. Take it a second to just look after the tyres a bit, even at this stage. You know, once he's through, that's when the hot laps begin. But again, overriding it all, we don't think it's going to count for much, but still it gives us something interesting to watch in the mid-pack of this race, because we've had some fantastic fights for the positions outside of the top 5.
Yeah, we really have, and it's a shame for him that this gamble's not paid off, because it's been really interesting how quickly he's closed up onto the back of it. I really want to see what lap time he's capable of when he's not hunkered up to the back of the car in front. So he needs to kind of, there we go, that's exactly what you were talking about, Chaz. The apex speed of those two cars was so different, and Gikli now has got a great opportunity to shadow the car through this chicane. He's got better run, better corner exit speed, no doubt, although he runs very deep in the corner, and that compromised him for the second part of the lap now. But can he use the extra grip that he's got? No, he can't, because he's got another car up his inside, and that's the Icelandic car. Jokelsson decided, you know what, you've had long enough, I'm going to have a go at this one. And there we go, great move from Jokelsson there in the number 28 to move his way up in at 8th position. So we thought that was going to be a fairly easy overtake, but in reality, he's gone back one.
Yeah, he has indeed. But we knew that Jokelsson was so quick anyway in that Audi, and it was a shame what happened earlier on. And then, of course, he had the penalty as well added on for the collision that he caused into the second chicane. So it's been a very tough race for the Icelandic driver, and now only getting up into 8th position. He's not completed the recovery drive yet. He's only got 18.5 minutes left to do it. It's been a bit of a tough challenge, this one.
A strong recovery, though, regardless,
Yes,
as you say, plenty to overcome, plenty of dramas that have come his way, some of his own making, some made upon him. So Håkan Jökulsson currently in 8th position, the number 28 representing Iceland, but he's got very much for company, the 33 McLaren behind, and then the not insignificant task of doing what nobody else has managed to do so far and find a way past that Lamborghini, because that is a stout defence, to say the least. It seems like every car in this field has tried to find a way past Pashtikov, and no one's actually done it yet.
No, they've not. It's been a really, really good run, actually, to be honest. That Lamborghini is probably the widest Lamborghini in the world, I should say, not the loudest. They are loud cars as it is anyway. Jökulsson flashing the headlights again as he came onto the start-finish straight. He was doing that earlier on in the quarterfinals as well. Very close to the back of him. You could see a bit of a wiggle on the brakes there as well. It's almost like it caught him out, but Pashtikov, when he's under pressure, it just seems he does go a little bit deep into the corner each time, doesn't it? You can definitely see he's feeling that pressure. But right now, well, Jökulsson's going to go down the inside here, tries to go later on the brakes, but no, he turns in early. He says, no, thank you, I don't want any of that. Part of my brain, oh, well, there you go. I did think he got it a little bit hot. Part of my brain telling me that the side of that looks like a British police car, that Lamborghini. But side by side now with Piccoli, just squeezes through, finally gets it done.
Yeah, brilliant stuff. And I think actually, if I'm honest with you, Jökulsson, that was a tactic. Put the car up the inside, pressure, exactly what you were saying. He'll have seen that Pashtikov's a little bit shaky in competition. The car's not looking as comfortable as maybe as he wanted it to be. And there you go, a slam dunk, nice, easy overtake. But there we go, Pashtikov now immediately on the attack again, goes to the outside once again. Jökulsson is running away with it at the front of it. And there we go, we don't even need to deal with a corner, does Pashtikov. The straight line advantage, the launch off of the previous turn, and that is done and done.
Well, it looked a little bit twitchy, though, as he turned into the right-hander, and down the inside goes Piccoli once more. He says, have it. Gives him a bit of a tap on the way through. Pashtikov sideways, though, can't get the traction down on the rear tyres. That Lamborghini does just seem like it might be the tyres underneath it that have gone off a bit early, because even when he's coming out of the corner, you know, it doesn't want to behave. The rear end is dancing around, and it's almost like it's on ice. You know, it doesn't look that dramatic from the outside, but when you know the sim and you've seen it a lot, you can just tell when a car is just having that little bit of float and a little bit of slip from the rear end as it comes out of the corner. It's just not working for him right now. Oh,
we'll have seen it on races on television a million times. If you can see the car moving on the pictures externally, amplify that by 1,000 when you're in the cockpit. So if you can see a little twitch on there in the cockpit, it's going to be seesawing left and right. And as you say, that car looks really difficult to drive at this stage. So Pashtikov, as we said up to this point, had a great drive, really nice defensive drive, but unfortunately the dam has been broken and now he's dropped down into 9th position, and Piccoli ahead moves up in a way, and Jökulsson up into 7th position.
Yeah, they're becoming a little bit academic at this point though, aren't they? Now that Park is still 11.3 seconds off Pisco in 5th position. That is not under threat either, so I feel that a lot of this now is just going to be about bragging rights and just getting whatever you can out of the race, because I think at the end of the day, if these drivers can just try and gain that one extra place towards the end of proceeding, you still never know what can happen in the very last moments of this race. We saw it earlier with Gribov, who's currently in 2nd place. He had a spin with, what, 2 laps to go, 1 lap to go, and that was it. And they were out of the next qualifying race, and he was out of his quarterfinal, and he had to come into these last chance races. That could happen to anybody in front. They could have an incident, hit the wall, hit a lapped car even. We saw it with our race leader Nico Rublar in the last race. Lapped car turns in, causes a big old shunt. Luckily, he had a massive lead. If that happens to somebody who's only 4 seconds ahead of you, freebie. Yeah,
well, if I'm just looking down my notes now, in the last 6 minutes of races that have gone previously, we've had cars running out of fuel. We've had, as you say, cars making contact with back markers completely of their own doing. Drivers spinning all on their own. Drivers spinning in competition with others. So that's 4 different scenarios in just the 4 races that we've had, all in the last 4, 5, 6 minutes, sometimes even less than that, in points-paying positions. So as you say, if you can't be running in that top 5, you want 6th or 7th, and you want to go as fast as you can to be as close as you can to maybe take advantage. And as you say, looking at the timing screens now, I dare say that's, people are waiting for an opportunity now rather than having the control within their own hands, I think. And The only thing you can do really in that situation as a driver is apply pressure.
Yeah.
And when we say apply pressure, that's not always been all the way up the back of somebody and moving left and right. That's lap time pressure. Because as you said, each driver sees the information on their heads-up display and they'll see that they're lapping half a second, quarter of a second slower than the car behind.
Yeah.
That gets in your head very quickly.
It does, yeah. You've just got to keep pushing. At the end of the day, especially when you're in a longer race and you're chasing gaps and so on, it can be so difficult to be chasing numbers on a screen.
Yeah.
Because you don't have a physical, visual representation of that. When you have the car in front of you and you can see it,
yes,
that suddenly becomes more of a target because you can see the object that you want to get in front of. You know what the distance is. When you're chasing numbers, it's very, very hard, but that's why you need to knuckle down and keep making those numbers smaller, make those gaps smaller to the car in front of you. And these drivers right now, that is all they can do. So the last sort of 13 minutes of this race is all just going to be about hot lapping, plugging those consistent lap times in, and just seeing what comes of it come the end.
And hoping that the car comes to you and your rival's car goes away from them. Somebody who's having a very nice run of it, indeed, after 24 laps, is Luca Lozio. So that gap dropped to around the 2-second mark after the pit window closed. 7.5 seconds, he's now extended his race lead. Lozio will have half a high on the fuel economy, because he got caught out last time. Maybe there's a couple of litres more than necessary in the car just to play it safe. But Lozio, we've seen this in the last chance qualifier as well. The race leader has just been on another plane this weekend, today even, and Lozio's doing exactly the same thing again. A great drive so far at the front of the field.
Yeah, it really is. And to be honest, it shows you as well that, I mean, they deserve to be up there with the pace that they've shown, but it just shows you that they fell on hard times in the quarterfinals as well, and just how fickle that can be. You know, no matter who you are in the race, whether you are one of the fastest guys in the field, you're not immune to having issues. You're not immune to having incidents or falling by the wayside because of somebody else's mistake. If someone closes the door on you or just sends one up the inside, you know, you're not immune to any of it. And I think that competitions like this, where you progress from one race to the next and only a certain amount of people get through, they're important lessons for drivers, that it's not all about championships and finishing 7th because, you know, that's all the points you need or it's a consistent score. Sometimes you have to be in certain places at certain times to get what you want as an end goal.
Yeah, and I think that, again, that's a really important lesson as well. We see good driving there from Arshildan, 11th position, getting well out of the way of the Gribov number 49 machine who's putting a lap on him. I like to see that one. It's not always happened over the course of this weekend with some of the drivers, but getting clearly out of the way, don't impede the car that's make it nice and simple, nice and straightforward, telegraph what you're doing. So good driving there as we're looking now at Sultan Abdulrahman for the United Arab Emirates in 12th position, the last of our runners, 2 laps down. That's a car that's been in more than its fair share of drama as well over the course of this race, unfortunately.
Yeah, there's a couple, isn't there? I mean, even going back to the quarterfinals, there's a couple of cars that just, the look has not aligned for them at all, you know. Sometimes they've had a little bit of a moment where they might have lost it themselves or just had a bit of argy-bargy with somebody else, but then there are other teams involved that have just had constant moments where they get caught up in an incident happening in front of them and there's a car parked in their way, or somebody goes down the inside a bit late and just whacks them off the road. And sometimes it can just be innocent stuff. When you're battling early on, you can end up 3 wide, you can end up 2 wide and whatever else, and contact is more inevitable. But yeah, it's a shame to see it, but at the end of the day, that's competition.
Oh, we also said in the last race, and it stands true still, it's also a learning exercise. All these drivers that aren't necessarily running right at the very front of the field, every lap you do in competition, in this environment, surrounded by, there are various levels of professionalism. Some teams have been around for years, some are part of massive powerhouses within the esports industry, and then they're representing their country for this particular competition. You can learn from that. You can learn on track, 100%. You can learn from observing how people behave around each other and with the media and all that kind of thing, their preparation, what goes into it when they're here, what they do while they're here. All of these are learning exercises. And this is the FIA Motorsport Games 2022. The next time we run this, each and every one of these drivers, this is a known quantity now. They've been here, they've done it, they've learned from it, and they've got a couple of years to put those learnings into motion to be a stronger competitor.
Yeah, seat time. Seat time is key, and like you say, competitive seat time especially, you know, and there are drivers that have come here just off the fact that they have, well, don't have to, but they want to represent their nation. in a competition like this. And they don't have anywhere near the experience that some of the real top guys in the Assetto Corsa Competizione do, and some of them that we have on the roster this weekend. It's frightening. It's frightening how fast some of them are. But having that pace difference and having that spread of talent through the pack, rather than everybody be half a thousandth of a second off each other, it means that we don't end up with races that are just one long train where everybody's scared to make a manoeuvre or scared to lose out. It means that we've got a bit more of a spread, and you do get surprise results. You get drivers that may not be as experienced, but they'll put on an amazing defensive performance, or people that will just randomly find their way through the pack by just surviving. And having that spread makes it more exciting to watch. And of course, as a spectacle and as an event, that's what everybody wants.
Oh, absolutely. And I think also it's very nice. We can see this by the dint of the fact that we're actually physically here in an arena. Everyone's got a smile on the face.
Yeah.
Good result or bad result. It's just a sensational event to be a part of. The Fanatec Esports Cup is part of one of the 16 disciplines of the 2022 FIA Motorsport Games. To have sim racing held in such high regard that it is and again, I really wish I could bring everybody that's listening and watching at home here to see the sheer scale of this setup, the professionalism, how outstanding the stage looks, and the lights, and the rigging, and the cameras, and the gantries, and the rigs that Fanatec have brought, the event that SRO Motorsports put together, that AK Esports have put together. It's all so deeply impressive. It's just sensational as well. Looking at a little replay now again, running out of tyres, running out of turning capability, and running out of tarmac eventually as well.
Yeah, getting onto the marbles as well. It's like somebody's put a magnet on the fence. It just drags the car away. That's a Charlie Cox line, that from the 90s. Yeah. But it's honestly so painful when you do get on the marbles. And again, it's hats off to the sims for being so realistic.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
You feel when you're on the marbles, and if you've got a wheel that can put out detailed enough feedback, you know, you feel the rumble of it. You feel that horrible surface that you go over. And you get that horrendous understeer where you just put the lock on and nothing happens. And you just have to sort of accept that it's going off.
And then, of course, you're paying the price after the incident as well when cleaning the tyre back up again. The older the tyre is, the more worn the tyre is, the harder it is to clean back up and get it back on pace. So then you as a competitor get outside of the zone that you found yourself in, and you've got to lock yourself back down. And going back to a point you made a little while ago, when the gaps are reasonably sized like this, it's not like you can then focus on the car in front and get back on the back of it, because there isn't a car to be seen in front. So it's down to you and your mentality and looking at the times, and that is so much more difficult than it sounds on paper. As we're looking now at Clement Joke for Slovenia, holding on to third position, 3.3 seconds away, so still within touching distance of Gribov, but with 6 minutes 11 seconds left, it's going to require an external factor to allow him to get into it, isn't it?
Yeah, I was going to say miracle, but I like external factor. I like that one. A third party.
Yes, a third. And we've seen cars run afoul of traffic already in the broadcast and in the course of the event all today. So it's not over until it's over. But I will say, credit where credit's due, I have been a little bit critical on air of some of the backmarker behaviour earlier. From what I've seen so far, everybody's behaving themselves very, very nicely in terms of like getting out of the way of the leaders, and more importantly, not just getting out of the way of the leaders, but being predictable.
Yes, and like you said, it's not about anything malicious or anything like that. You know, they're not here to ruin people's races.
No, of course
or to spice it up. You know, it's not like somebody's just said, I don't even know what you'd say to him, but just, you know, see this guy behind you, just try turning in on him a bit. There's nothing like that going on. It's all drivers, again, getting the experience. They might not have had the whole experience of lap traffic before. It's not something that you can simulate easily with that sort of pace difference. And, you know, it's just intriguing to see that we still have that respect between them all.
And I just want to touch on that, actually, about not having experience of lap traffic. Let's remember, yes, there's a bit of a spread in performance from front to back in this competition, but all these drivers representing their nation are the top of their own individual field. So you're absolutely right. They're not used to being 12th and being laps. They're used to what they compete in day out, being front, and being the one doing the lapping, if anything. So you're absolutely right. It's not sort of, and Assetto Corsa Competizione in particular, predominantly is a single make formula. Yes, there's the GT4s and GT3s, and you can do a multi-class, but predominantly it's all one class. A 1 hour race seems to be the sweet spot for esports. So you don't really get traffic in any normal circumstance. It really is a completely alien experience for them, and it's very, very difficult, and you can very quickly get phased.
Yes.
You see I've done it before. You see the name of, oh my goodness, this is a fast guy coming up behind me. And you don't lose your composure, I think it's the wrong word to say it, but you can overthink it again, what we said, and before you know it, it's like, oh, he's on top of me, oh, we're doing figure skating in the gravel trap.
Yeah, well, that's it. I mean, it's the fact that in the sim you obviously get your digital mirror as well, your virtual mirror as they call it. You can see that in your screen. If you just take a look at that at the wrong point of the circuit and your car started to break away or you started to run wide, or you hit a curb, you know, that can cause an incident in itself. So you've got to be so careful. Looking here at second place though, Denis Gribov for Israel. These guys will be a lot happier now, won't they? Because considering how heartbreaking it was earlier when they suddenly dropped off near the end of their quarter-final, being right up there now in second position, having a tidy run. He's got 3.6 seconds to Clement Jug behind him. Doesn't have to really worry right now. Just get the car home. A couple of laps to go. And
they showed great pace, as you say, in their quarter-final. They were running 9th into the last 6 minutes of the race, and then an unforced error from Gribov, half spin of the car, like you said before, those lazy, frustrating spins that you just can't catch, and you know it's coming a week before it happens. Drop them down to 11th place, so 1 place away from where they needed to be to qualify. So it would have been tragic if they'd not have made it through to the next stage of the competition. It's great actually, Chaz. Big shout out to the organisers here for having these last chance saloon races. For people that would feel genuinely hard done by and unfortunate to go home so early. It's great to give them these 2 race opportunities, and Gribov grabbed both of those with both hands, and so far is second on the field.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. You know, it's always interesting as well as a spectator when you see the drivers that didn't quite make it through, but they weren't already in the same race together, and you think, I wonder how that guy get on against them, or I wonder how that driver did against that driver. And then when you throw them all in the mix, obviously we've not got all of them together because we've got another. This is the second last chance race. We had the other one earlier on, so we've not got everyone in one heat, but it's still interesting to see the sort of relative performance between them all. And you do get the drivers that shine through when the sort of the level and the top half is cut off a little bit, you know, and they're the ones that would have been in the mid pack in the whole field. They look like superstars because you really get the chance to witness what they can do and appreciate it.
And that's a beautiful point, because in sport we always focus at the front of the field, don't we?
Yeah.
But you've got to, because that's where the stories are. But as you say, it's nice to give these people who are very, very good in their own right.
Yeah.
It's just...
There's that 2 to 5% on top.
And it's nice to have that moment, isn't it, to show, like you say, show their skills and give them the opportunity as well. And don't forget, the top 5 from this will go into the semi-finals tomorrow. Yes, they'll be at the back of the field because of how the regulations are structured, but they've still got a very good chance. Luca Lozio's gone from 12th to 1st in about 3 seconds in this race. So start at the back of the field is not a sentence to finish last by any stretch of the imagination. No. And also, I've not really thought about this until just now, these drivers that have done these 2 last chance races, or 1 each, they've got 1 more race experience than the people that they're racing against tomorrow.
That's very true.
Which is seat time, learnings.
Exactly.
That's a little bit more, that's a confidence boost. That's a little bit more in their armoury than people they're going to race against.
Yeah, well, that's it. You can look at it both ways. You can look at, they've done more racing, so they might be tired and a bit more fatigued by it, but they've got more chance to get into this rhythm that I keep mentioning, and then just know what the circuit's doing, know how the car's behaving, and importantly, because the race is the same length, they're not shortened races for these last chances, you get to know how it's behaving at certain points of the race, when the tyres start to go off, when it starts to get a bit light on fuel, and when it's a bit more twitchy. So the drivers have had another opportunity to do that full race run rather than just hot laps, and that's what makes it interesting. We are, though, into the final 15 seconds in the final lap of the race. I can't believe that's already gone by, but Luca Lozio, well, we said he was one to watch, but he proved us right very, very quickly here, didn't he?
Well, in fact, he became not one to watch because he did all the work so quickly that he became very boring and old news after about 7 or 8 minutes because he scythed his way through the field. And it's great to see. It was heartbreaking for Luca when he ran out of fuel on the Mistral straight on the final lap of the race when in a qualifying position, but started from the back of the grid. No doubt he's had himself a real load of fun, and then for the final time there's enough fuel in his wagon, so Luca Lozio for Italy takes the race victory, takes the spot into the semi-finals and wins in dominant fashion in the last chance qualification race. Fantastic drive from 12th on the grid, decisive when he needed to be, strong when he needed to be, and his reward is the applause of the audience and the checkered flag. Second position, Denis Gribov crosses the line just ahead of Jug in the number 53 machine. Gubarev's in 4th, and Pisco not quite at the line yet, but will be the final driver that qualifies. And Chaz, we thought it was going to be a good one. It had its moments, but it was certainly full of drama.
It was indeed, yeah, and that's it. I mean, penalties, drivers not quite fulfilling their pit stops, unfortunately, in the case of Giacoli, but we had a great prospect of that really throwing up a mixed result near the end and just showing us, just giving us an example, as there's Luca Losio with the number one. Lovely stuff indeed. But we had the potential to see just what might happen if somebody takes tyres, but even though Giacoli stayed out there, we don't know if he took 2, 4, whatever tyres, whether it was just a mistake, and as soon as he realised it went down off the jacks. But he didn't make that much progress, so we're not sure at this point what the situation was. We'll try and find out, of course, but still, we have our 5 that go through: Losio, Gribov, Jug, Gubarevs, and Pisco. That'll teach me for trying to say it too quickly, won't it? But still, top 5 goes through, and another entertaining race in the books.
Yeah, so we've put 40 drivers through today, 38 from the quarterfinals, 10 from these 2 last chance races, and then we come back again tomorrow for not 1 but 2 semi-final races, and then a final where we're going to award a gold, silver and bronze for the nations that are most successful. The Motorsport Games, the FIA Motorsport Games in 2022, the Fanatec Esports Cup, has been sensational already, and we're only just getting started. We've seen so many talented drivers, the audience again applauding as everybody comes round on the slow down lap to pit lane. And Jazz, I hate to put you on the spot on this one, but I'm going to anyway. Who's your man of the race for this particular one that we've just seen?
I'm one of these guys that doesn't like giving driver of the race to the race winner, but it has to go to Losio, because he had the heartbreak of the fuel issue earlier after a really tough race anyway, after getting turned around at turn 1. But then he's been able to keep his head in this race and get back into it at full flow and dominate this race. Because he could have early on been very tentative and thought, right, I've got a long time to do this. But he went full attack straight away, caught everyone off guard and just did it. So he's, for me, driving the race. What about you?
No, I'd absolutely agree. I think that's a great shout. And I think that's a great way to close out the show for today. So everybody here in the hall and everybody watching at home, thank you very much for being with us. Don't forget that we're doing semi-final 1 tomorrow afternoon again, live here in the Mistral Hall at the circuit. Paul Ricard. So from myself, Paul Jeffrey, from Chaz Draycott, and from everybody behind the scenes, the drivers, the fans, and the organisers, thank you for tuning in to the Fanatec Esports Cup for the 2022 FIA Motorsport Games. We'll see you all again tomorrow afternoon.